Yeah, so that's what we'll be talking about today. How to do that literature review. How exactly do you do the literature review? Where do you go? What do you consider to be a reliable resource? And how do you even start? So there are different types. So there are different types of literature review. So here's a book. So there are different types of literature reviews, and so it depends on what you want to do. So if you want to just get a general idea about something, then you can start with what we call a narrative overview or narrative review. That gives you an idea, a general idea about what the topic of interest, what you're interested in studying. So for example, we say that the narrative review will provide you with a general overview of studies conducted in your topic of interest to allow you to establish the context and reasoning and also the potential main conclusions. So just a general overview. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, there's what's called a scoping review. And a scoping review synthesizes the knowledge on a general topic to locate research gaps and then also map key concepts and types of evidence within that topic. So first, you get an idea of just a general overview about what's out there on the topic that you're interested in studying. And then next, you can then do a bit more, take it further in what they call a scoping review to allow you to then start. So this requires you to read a bit more than the narrative review. Now you read a bit more, you do your research, your literature review is a bit further, more in depth, I think is the word I'm looking for, and allowing you to see what has been done and also what has not been done. And then from there, being able to see what could be potentially a gap. And then the systematic review identifies all existing evidence. So all evidence based on the pre-specified criteria. And there's specific methods that will allow you to minimize bias and find the best sources or resources when you're doing a systematic review. So narrative review gives you an overview. The scoping review goes a bit further by allowing you to locate research gaps. So you do more reading and you see what's been done, what has not been done, and then you find research gaps. And then the systematic review allows, it's very thorough, and you provide specific criteria about what you're looking for. And from there, you're able to find you're able to find resources that are more accurate related to what you're interested in studying. So I was asking you, what is the literature review? So literature review allows us to, it refers to a compendium of published information. So basically it's looking at published information on a specific subject within a certain time period. So if you're looking for trying to find research gaps for something you're interested in studying today, would you be looking, what would be the best timeline for when to look for? So would you, when you're providing references, what do you think of citing something? What's that noise?
Raining.
Not raining.
It's raining from the Google, so that's why the noise.
It's not raining. That's okay. Did you see water?
It's raining.
Oh, it is raining. Okay. So what about citing, let's say, you want to talk about the topic we were discussing yesterday. We were looking at some mothers' education, for example, and breastfeeding practices and child growth and growth among the children. So if you want to do if that was your research topic, what do you think about using references from, let's say, 30 years ago, right? So we want, when they say within a certain time period, we want to reference the most recent information. You can reference what's been done before in the past also, but we also want to make sure that we're looking at the most recent and updated research. So what might have been done 30 years ago or 50 years ago, and I'm exaggerating that time period, but the idea is to not only look at what has been done in the past, but you also want to look at what's most recent. Some people have different ideas about what that time frame is. Some people say you want to try to provide references that are within 10 years. Others say, but in some more technical fields, you probably even want less than 10 years because technology changes so fast. So, for example, a few years ago, I was doing a project in proteomics using data from mass spectrometry. But even like within 5 years, the science, the technology has changed so much that some of the issues that I was referring to related to the data, even within 5 years, has changed. So depending on your field, the time period, 10 years might be okay, but then even in some other field, looking at what's been done within 10 years might even be old. So, but but the key thing though is that we want to look at information, not only what has been done in the past or what's been classically done, but we also want to look at what are the most recent practices. So the literature review allows you, it includes publications such as journal articles or books, and it's the first step of the research process to allow us to find research gaps, useful methodology, and also supports our study. So if you've been in studying in one area for a while, if you have an area of expertise, you probably know, you have an idea of what's been done and what hasn't been done because you know the field. But at the same time, to confirm that, you want to go do some literature review to make sure that no one else has done that before. And also, even if someone else has done it, how can you do it differently? Remember, we talked about innovation yesterday. How can you approach the same problem differently? So we want to look at use the literature review to allow us to find those research gaps and then the most useful methods and that would support the study you want to conduct. So then I asked this question earlier, why do we want to do a literature review? What is the purpose of doing a literature review? If you're interested in studying, let's see, let's say if you're interested in studying, let's see, some kind of lifestyle behavior among teenagers in urban Lao. So why couldn't you just go and just do the research? Why do you need to do a literature review to do that? So if you want to study certain behavior among teenagers in, let's say, urban Vientiane, I don't know, urban Lao, why do you need to do a literature review to do that? You live here, right? So couldn't you just go do the study? Why do you need to do a literature review? What benefits do you gain from doing a literature review to do that study? Yes, go ahead.
I think why we need to review because we didn't know about in maybe this it makes it happen like a food behavior, something like that. But we would like to know the other country or other paper they did before or not. and the method, the way they did before, or the problem, or some makes we think about variable or factor around that maybe come up from literature review. And one more thing, if we did some literature review, will help us the more ideas. And then we think we would like to do some maybe we found in other paper significant variable, but for our research maybe it's not something that we should have in literature.
Okay, so what if, let's say, the study you want to do, something similar has been done in, let's say, Bangkok? Why can't you just use that information here? Can you use could you use that information to just do your research here?
I think we should do in real, we should do the research in the urban in Lao. Maybe we have similar, but not the same. We should have, because we should compare, or sometimes we need to compare or different from the experience.
Right. So even if something has been done in other places, you want to see what's been done, the gaps in the specific population or location that's of interest to you, right? Because there are different characteristics in different places, and what might happen and what might work in one place might not necessarily work here in Vientiane. So you want to do some literature review to give you that information. It also allows you to be more proficient on the topic, right? So you're by reading and learning more about the topic, you become very, very familiar with the topic. So for example, in my area, in the area of research that I work on, I'm very familiar with what's been done and what hasn't been done. And it's very easy to come up with some ideas about what to do, because I know I'm on top of the literature and I'm aware of what's been done and what the gaps are. So it's very easy to identify new topics to work on or new ideas to propose. So that's what we want to do. When you start a topic that's of interest to you, an area that you want to study, you keep up with the literature review. It allows you to know and become very proficient on the topic of study. It also allows you to develop a theoretical framework and methodology that could support your research question and hypothesis. So you know, not only are you proficient, you also know more about the theory and also the methods that you can use for your specific, for example, you want to study teenagers here in Vientiane, you know specifically what would work, the different kind of methods that are available to you that you could use. And also it allows you to evaluate the current literature and also debate around the topic. So it allows you to know that we know not only what's available, but also allows you to be able to question. Yesterday, Roger was talking about questioning what you see, and you did that exercise. So it allows you to use your knowledge once you become more proficient on the topic. Use your knowledge to say, I'm not sure if I really agree with this. Maybe let's try to do this differently. So there are some characteristics of a literature review. Overall, the literature review follows an organizational process that's determined by the time frame for published articles on the subject. So we're talking about, do we want to look at articles on breastfeeding practices from 50 years ago, or would looking at articles from breastfeeding practices from, let's say, the last 5 years be more relevant? How has the topic changed over time? So one thing I always tell my students is that research builds on research, right? So so I think someone used the example of standing on each other's shoulders. So you start something or someone starts something and you build on it and you build on it. So allows you, when you look at what's been going on in the field for a while, it allows you to see how that has changed over time. So let's use an example of physical activity. Physical activity at some point we used questionnaires for that. So if you want to know people's physical activity behavior, we would ask them questions, use a self-reported measure. But now the most common practice is to use wearable devices. And then even with the wearables, there are even different kinds of wearable devices that we can use to monitor people's physical activity behavior. Same thing with nutrition, right? What people are reporting eating. There's some nutrients that we focus mostly, or food items where we ask questions, and now some people are moving towards imaging and more complex ways of trying to see what people are eating and people's eating behavior. So things change over time. And when you're studying, when you're looking at your research, doing your literature review, it allows you to see what has been done in the past, and then how things are changing, and maybe how you can contribute to that change. And the focus of the study is, a bit more about what you want to study and the methods that are, and methods and designs that are applicable. When we're doing a literature review, it needs to be informative, right? We need to get information about what we're interested in studying. It also needs to be clear. And that only comes by us being able to refine. So you start with something very broad. I used the example the other day of, let's say you want to do a study and you say, my objective is to end world hunger, right? That's very broad. World hunger where, right? So that's it's an honorable thing to do, but then you can refine and make it very specific to your local area, and then even be more specific about how you want to help with those efforts. So it needs to be very clear, and also provide relevant information to the specific topic that you want to study. It also needs to be coherent, addresses the potential research question of interest. So when we first start doing research, I believe one of the challenges is when you're doing literature review, you feel like you have to include everything, right? You have to include everything. But let's say you're writing a paper, which at some point we'll talk about, we feel like we have to include everything that's ever been done. But when you're writing a paper, you can read that for yourself and for your own knowledge, but you just don't have that much space when you're writing a paper to include everything. So the skill also becomes what's important to include. You need to include enough information that allows you to, there's a coherent argument, a clear argument about what you're trying to show. And it's also very specific to what you're interested in studying. So if you're interested in looking at children, your population, let's say, or children in Vientiane, focus your literature review on that in that area. If there's none, which is actually quite possible, you might not find some that could be even the new thing. What's the closest to Vientiane, closest culture or place that has done it, and use that information to help you build up the argument for doing a similar study where you are. And it also needs to be comprehensive. So it's interesting because one of the things one of the issues I have with some of my students is that they want to include everything. And I'm like, no, right? Because we just don't have, we don't have enough, not only it's sometimes more information is not necessarily better. We want the information that's comprehensive and it's very specific to what you're studying. And so, like I said, you want to read as much as possible in the background for your own knowledge, but when you're writing it, when it's all over the place, the arguments are all over the place, it's not coherent. So it makes it difficult to follow. So it's not necessarily better to include everything you've read or you've seen, but you want after reading and learning as much as possible about the topic, you now want to narrow it down to specifically what's of interest and what's related to what you're studying. There are different steps to follow in terms of a standard of series of steps to conducting a literature review. The first thing is, what do you want to study, right? What do you want to study? What are potential data sources? Determine some keywords. So for example, when you want to do a search, you might start with some specific keywords, but then as you notice, sometimes you use those keywords and nothing will come up. You might not find things relevant to exactly what you're interested in studying. But then as you're reading more, you're noticing that other words are showing up more than what you initially thought. So you can define your own, not your research strategy by looking at keywords and defining and refining those keywords with more searches. So you're going to look at relevant literature and also select and evaluate literature. So if you're interested in a specific topic, but you find other topics that might be of interest, but they're not related to the specific topic you want to study, then that's not necessarily relevant to what you're studying at the moment. You can put that aside and just focus and select and evaluate the literature that's very specific to the example that you're dealing with. And also, I was asking you, how do you assess the quality of the literature? And also, how do we, another step is extracting the data and then putting it all together. So those are some of the steps. But the key thing I want you to take away from this is that we need to know our topic. And when we're doing our literature review, we need to use reliable sources and also be able to find things that are timely related to what you're studying. So I wrote a paper that was rejected, and I decided I want to resubmit it or submit it again, but I submitted it 10 years ago, right? And it's in proteomics. So the technology has changed a lot. The references that I had were from more than 10 years ago. So, it's like having to redo the whole, maybe things might not have changed that much, but to submit that, I have to do another literature review. I have to update. Even if the methods that I'm proposing are still novel, I still have to check to make sure that what the literature that I used for more than 10 years ago is still it needs to be updated. Most likely there would be updates. So we want something that's timely, that's timely. And also when you do all your searches, you want to find a way of describing and summarizing the results from your search. So we talked about defining a topic. So yesterday when we gave that, I spent some time, I think it was yesterday, or maybe it was yesterday when we talked about a specific example from the mixed data. We had a topic in mind. So it's necessary to have clarity on your area of study. And so that means we also, when we're getting clarity, we need to know what's the exposure, what's your outcome, and what do you think will happen? What's the relationship between your exposures and your outcome? So your topic should be broad enough to have a specific area of study. We defined exposures and outcomes, but not too narrow, particularly when we start exploring research gaps. So an example would be vitamin B complex and cognitive impairment in elderly. So here we have, what's the exposure here? In that example, what's the exposure? What's the exposure?
Vitamin B complex.
And what's the outcome? In elderly. And the population that elderly. Okay, so there are different data sources. So this was why I was asking you, we want to look at peer reviewed. Why do we look at peer reviewed and not Wikipedia? Why do you want to look at peer reviewed? You can look at Wikipedia to give you a general idea, look at Google to give you a general idea, but why do we want to look at peer reviewed articles? What's the purpose? Why do we want to look at peer reviewed articles?
Because the peer review is more expert in the field. It's more, yeah, it's expertise on that field.
Expert on the field, like the PubMed in medical needs a lot, and PubMed for the or NCD or nutrition. We need to look
to ensure that only the quality of research that's on the published
Yeah, so we hope that, that it's gone through a thorough and rigorous peer review process where the people who wrote the article has been reviewed by other experts or other researchers in the field to really, really question the science, to really allow it to go through a rigorous review process so that when you, the readers, are reading it, you can trust that it's a reliable resource. And so that's the idea. That's the idea. But sometimes it's not always. It doesn't always go that way. But that's the general purpose. So there are different sources for this. We can use PubMed. So we can use PubMed, Cochrane Library, and Cochrane Reviews, Scopus, a document search, a Web of Science. Google Scholar, these are some examples of databases that you can use when you're doing your search. But you want to conduct your literature search using multiple sources. So you don't want to get all your references all from Google Scholar, for example. You want to use, because Google Scholar might have some references, but then it might not have some references that might be included in PubMed. Or PubMed might have some references, but it might not have everything that might be included in Scopus. So we want to do a thorough review. And one thing I also notice is that sometimes, we'll talk about this shortly, but defining our strategy. But sometimes you might notice, so this is why it's very helpful to really look at different keywords. You might be using one keyword, but then it might also be under another keyword. It might also be under another keyword. Did you want to say something?
You may just want to check too. What databases do you all have access to? Can you use Scopus and PubMed from here? And
you have Google Scholar?
we can access
Do you have PubMed? It's PubMed. So what database do you use here? Do you have access to? Google Scholar?
Because for example, for the Scopus or some article there, you cannot access. You just have access only
Abstracts?
Yes.
And so you have PubMed access?
Yes.
PubMed?
Yes.
What else? Google Scholar?
Yes.
And what else?
volunteer that sometimes they're available for your big article as well, but mostly
expensive. So the idea is, so you have PubMed, you have access to PubMed, Google Scholar. The idea is to use different sources. So don't only use Google Scholar. use different sources that you have access to so you can get different ideas and different sources for you to look at. But also what I was saying earlier was that you can notice that sometimes you use certain keywords, and when you're using those keywords, things that you're looking for might not necessarily be coming up under those keywords. But then as you're doing your literature review, you start noticing that certain keywords seem to be appearing more to describe your research topic or allowing you to find the articles that you want more than others. So you can always refine those keywords as well. So we want to define your research strategy. So I was talking about keywords. The keywords and search terms that we use represent the key concepts and variables of the topic of study. Does someone want to can someone give an example of what they're studying and what would be some of the keywords that they used? What are you studying and what are some of the keywords that you would use?
For example, the keyword may be the main exposure or outcome. And
So first tell us what you're studying. What are you studying? And then we'll talk about.
For nutrition field, something nutrition among adolescents in Vietnam now. But for the keyword.
Okay, so, sorry, what about nutrition? What about nutrition? Because nutrition is very broad.
Nutritional factor and also factor among adolescents in yeah. But for nutrition factor, I focus on overweight and obesity. Overweight and obesity and factors associated with.
So give us a general topic. So nutritional status among teenagers in Vientiane.
And factors associated and
Okay, so if you have a general topic, then what would be the keywords that you would use to find literature or find references for that? Some examples of the keywords you would use.
I use nutritional factor and adolescent or teenager and Laos country.
Yeah.
But it's not maybe ASEAN or Thailand or China. It together. If you use for only one keyword, maybe come up with a lot for literature with that.
Right, so you have your general topic and then you find keywords relevant to the topic. So you want to include information about the exposure and your outcome and also location, for example, location, ethnic group, age group. Are you only studying girls, or are you studying boys, or are you studying girls and boys, women, men, or all adults, for example? So the keywords are very important to finding articles in search databases. And one thing, as I was mentioning earlier, one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes you start with one set of keywords and then you refine them as you go along, because you're finding that they're not coming up under what you initially thought they would come up under. And so as you're doing your searches, you also start finding keywords that better describe what you're interested in looking at. So we talked earlier in the previous example, we said we had an example of vitamin B complex. We want to study vitamin B complex and cognitive impairment in the elderly. And I'm not even sure, I think, I'm not even sure if they're in the aging field, if they're really wanting us to use the word elderly anymore. I think older adults is preferred. So maybe in older adults. And so the research strategy follows the order of the Boolean operators. So the operators would include and, or, and not, right? So we want to look at What was the example you gave? What was for your keywords? Status and
BMI category. Oh, now I know. Yeah, we have to use the synonym because it's like a nutritional status. We have like a obesity, overweight, or underweight, something, or BMI category. We use the different keyword, but the same meaning. Sometimes it's not come up on the nutritional status. For adolescent and adolescent, we use teenager, youth, something like that. They use many kind of keyword of the same meaning. Similar.
right. So you use the Boolean operators to combine the different keywords. So we can use and, or not. For example, if you want to exclude certain terms or certain groups. So for example, with the vitamin B example, we can say vitamin B complex and cognitive impairment or dementia or Alzheimer's disease, but not Lewy bodies disease. I'm not exactly sure what Lewy bodies disease is, but it's not related to cognitive impairment. So you want to use the keyword, the Boolean operators, the and for to combine, the or to provide alternatives, and not when it's not your area of interest. And it says work with the librarian to create a list of search terms. How many of you work with librarians? I don't know. I can't remember the last time.
Well, I had a librarian, especially when I was at Kentucky, we had a public health librarian, and they were specifically assigned. So I worked with her to create a comprehensive search term list for a series of articles that I wanted to get a really comprehensive review of. So they can be really useful. If you're particularly if your institution has, and I think I've done another time too with coming up with search terms to look at videos where people from cancer survivors on the internet, and we wanted to come up with a good search term for use on the internet. And so we worked with an information librarian too to do that. So sometimes it can be useful when you need something very comprehensive and somebody who has that knowledge at their fingertips.
So how many, thanks, Kate. So how many of you have worked with librarians when you're doing your search? Is that for example, if you go to the library here, is there at least?
Yes, exactly. That is my experience. Yes, also I work in institutes of the research and education development, including the library at USAID. Yes, as we know, we know that in we have a lot of book in there, but people did not do too much for that. Yes. In the real situation, and now we will do development about the e-library, but it will be not. We don't have the e-library in USAID, and now we will develop this this year.
Yeah. So if you have access to working with a librarian or someone with more expertise or experience with helping you find a list of search terms, you can. But one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people don't necessarily work with librarians now, especially since more people seem to be working from home. So one thing you could do also is when you're doing your literature review, you start finding more and more different words that show up They keep showing up in the same, with your search. And that can also help you refine your key terms, your list of search terms. But the key thing is to allow yourself to refine and redefine your search terms as you go along, so that you're able to find items that are very specific to what you've done. Oh, sorry, to what you're looking for. Okay, so define your research strategy. So the search databases can also include another set of keywords named MESH or medical subject headings. And these terms are controlled terms that were designed to record or be discoverable. It is advisable to look at the MESH terms before including multiple keywords in your search, as these terms can group several keywords. So for example, if we're looking at vitamin B complex, the MESH terms can include, so we have vitamin B complex, and then we can have, let's see. What you're looking for can be defined under other names. There can be other names for what you're looking for. So it's important to be able to recognize other names for the terms that you're looking for. So for example, for vitamin B complex, biotin, flavin, folic acid. So to be able to recognize some of the other terms that can be used to describe your regional search. And also we can we want to search relevant literature. So you add the pre-selected keywords in your search engine. So if you're using Google Scholar, or I think you also mentioned PubMed. So you want to add, once you find your keywords, you want to add them to the search engine using the Boolean terms also that we talked about, the and, or, and not. And define your scope. Consider in your search specific characteristics. Who are you looking for? So we're talking about older adults. So the demographics, the language, the date range, and study type, geographic region, and so on. So we want to try to even be more specific in our searches to allow us to define. So if we're looking at vitamin B complex and cognitive impairment among older adults, is it over older adults everywhere? Or is it all older adults regardless of their demographics? What kind of older adults? Is it only women, only men, and so on? So we want to get very specific about the search and the characteristics of the individuals we're looking in, individuals or other characteristics of the groups we want to study. So when we start with the relevant literature review, relevant literature, we start with the most recent publications and then look at older. So you can work backwards. It allows you to determine the most recent studies, and important to determine research gaps. It also helps to determine important references on the topic. For me, I actually do it the other way. I look to see what's been done more in the past, and then look to see how to update it, what's more recent, because research builds on research. And so how has the thinking evolved over time? You can also look backwards. Where are we now and where did we come from? So either way, but the most important thing is you want to look at what's most recent and also what has been done in the past. So if you don't go repeat what has been done in the past and what was updated from in the most recent times. So you want to look at what has been done in the past, what's the most recent, to allow you to be able to come up with what's relevant or what could be missing, what has someone not done already. And this process can be repeated with other databases. So this is an example from PubMed. You can use Google Scholar or other databases that you have access to for doing this search. But the most important thing is we want to assess the keyword searching strategy during the process. So if you're doing a search and you're not finding a lot of references relevant to what you want to study, you can change it. And you can change the keyword so that, and that comes from also looking up what comes up for you when you're doing the literature review to allow you to update the keywords in the different databases. And then you select and evaluate the literature. So this is where you start going deeper into your literature review. So once you've restricted, you have your titles and your abstracts, you've been able to remove what's not relevant, the articles that are not relevant to what you want to study. You retrieve the full text of the potentially relevant articles. So at first you might start with just a general, get an idea, read the abstract, and then you read the abstract and you say, oh no, I don't think this is relevant to what I want to do. So that's why your abstract, when you write your papers, your abstracts need to be comprehensive. They need to say as much as possible about what you're studying, your results, so that when it's almost like it's an ad, right? It's an ad for what you're doing so that people then read it to say, oh yes, this is relevant to what I want to study. No, this is not the population of interest for this specific topic. So link together articles that come from the same study. So for example, if you're looking at the mixed study or data, then you want to link all articles related to that. And you put that in one folder and then another search of databases in relevant to another study in another folder, for example. And then you want to now read the full text and articles that align with your criteria and search words and all the relevant information. And then we proceed to data collection. So okay, so during the selection and evaluation of the literature, we need to keep in mind the following things. So as you're reading, you've done your searches, you've identified your keywords, and you've identified some articles. Some of the things you want to keep in mind would be what question or problem is in this article. So that's the what that I was talking about yesterday. What is this article all about? What are the key concepts and how are they defined? Are the key concepts related to what you want to study? And what are the key theories, models, and methods? And what are the results and conclusions from the study? Does the publication relate to other literature in the field? So is this, so you might find, for example, when we're looking at physical activity, school-based physical activity intervention for physical activity among children. There are some studies that show that physical activity is beneficial in reducing obesity among children. And then there's also some published articles that say no. So you want to group those together, the ones that say that are for it and the ones that are against it. And these questions are all necessary to determine if the articles should be included or excluded in your literature review. And then you want to select and evaluate the literature during this process. We're still selecting and evaluating the literature. You want to look at whether or not the document, you want to screen basically. So you look at the number of records you identify through each database, and then look at the keywords. If there's some keywords are duplicated, you remove them. And you want to basically end up with number of studies, for example, number of studies included in your quantitative synthesis. So basically, during this process, it is necessary to document the screening and the selection process to to keep track of the number of articles retrieved that are duplicated, pre-screened, included, and excluded. So for your own, basically you want to keep track of all the different types of articles you found, the ones you keep and the ones you excluded. And then assessing the quality. So this was the question I was asking you earlier. How do you know what's a good, quote unquote, reference to use? So we want to use not only peer-reviewed, but we want to use peer-reviewed articles that are of quality, references that are of quality. So quality assessment allows us to establish transparency of evidence and the synthesis of results and findings. So there are different ways of assessing the quality of the study and also the study design. So here's one example of one study quality. The NHLBI and NIH website has a study assessment, quality assessment tool that can be used. And then once you've screened and selected the articles that meet the criteria of what you want to study, it's important to collect the relevant information. So that would include about the article, the authors, the years of publication, the study design. So basically you summarize what each article is doing. And then, so here's an example of a table for you. That it includes the author, the year, and so on, to allow you to synthesize and summarize the different articles that you found. And so once you finish creating your literature review table, you need to analyze the information you collected. Compare and contrast each study, their methods, results, and findings. So let's say one study is saying that physical activity, if you put a physical activity intervention in schools for children, elementary school age children, it's beneficial. And then another article is saying it's not beneficial to the children in their, let's say, body weight status, for example. The question one of the things you want to look at is, okay, so these two articles are saying they're doing similar studies, but they found different results. Compare them. What are the methods they use to do the analysis? Which one is more rigorous? What are the statistical methods? So one thing you might find also is that one study might have done a cluster randomized design. You talked about that earlier, but they didn't do the statistical analysis properly or something. So you want to basically compare the different articles. And it might be that the analysis, everything was done well, but the results just provide different results, and you want to be aware of that. So you want to look for trends and patterns, the different themes, conflicts and contradictions. So if that's what I was talking about, do you have agreement between studies? And then current influential theories or studies that change from previously established knowledge. And then what is the gap? That's where you come in. What are the gaps? How can you add to the knowledge? So the literature review is the stepping stone for your future study. And with it, we can find what is missing and what we can use to support what we want to do. So the key messages here are that a literature review is important, right? It allows us to look at information that has been established. What has been done in the past. It's very important to look at what's been done in the past and also what's most recent. And it's the first step to being able to identify the research gap and to situate your research. It follows an organizational process, and it needs to be clear. It needs to be informative. It needs to give you additional information. It needs to be clear. It needs to be coherent and comprehensive. And the steps that we talked about are there. And I think that's it for this topic. Thank you.
Let's start. Okay, So,
Baby shark, LANI.
oh. Okay, yeah. Okay, well, that's nice. That's nice. You see my screen now? Yes, you don't, sorry. But I'm gonna walk through you, I'm gonna walk you through it. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to, that's because it's slightly different from what we have in the deck. Because I don't think what we have in the deck actually talked about the chi-square test exactly that way. So yeah, we had to.
We
Yeah.
can deliver and make sure those get translated too, but this one, the categorical ones weren't in the.
Well, but the categorical ones, were a little bit slightly higher than what I want to talk about today. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of basic about categorical data first, right? But before I do that, let's go back here, right? That's what we always. So remember, I told you, I'm going to try to fill up this box here. That's the goal. All right? I already started here. Let's talk a little bit about here, right? What happened here? X is categorical. You got to think about X. Y is your response of interest, right? So if X is continuous, right? And so far, we've been talking about cases where X is continuous. Sorry, Y is continuous. And then we we started out when X is discrete. X is treatment. S is group 1, group 2, group 3, 4. All right. Oh, another one we forgot here. Remember? There's another test missing here. What is that? ANOVA. Nice. ANOVA. Right? ANOVA. We forgot ANOVA here. So this list is complete. Yesterday and this morning, we talked a little bit about regression. When was that? Well, that's the case when Y is continuous, X is also continuous, right? Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about where. Can you guess? Where? Here. The case where Y is categorical and X is also categorical. Okay? All right? And then I'm going to leave this part right here for MINOPA. That's the most fun part. She's going to do the most fun part. I'm going to do the boring one. Okay? So here we're going to talk about the case where X is categorical and Y is also categorical. And then you might ask, well, when would that happen? I said, well, let's look at a small example. An example relevant here. You see a lot of people who drive a motorbike here. Accident happens sometimes. Some people wear helmet, others don't wear helmets. Okay? All right? So now they want to pass a law to force people to wear helmets. But remember, before you can pass a law, right? Before you can make a decision, you have to have data to back it up. Why should we do it? If you have data, if you show people here, if you wear a helmet, you minimize your chances of head injuries, and then you minimize your chances of bad outcomes, even when you get into an accident. That's a good thing, right? Because accidents happen, right? Things happen. All right, so let's look at this example here we're looking at, right? So we have a table right here. Well, what we did, we really wanted to know whether or not people who are involved in accidents, right? Whether or not they had head injuries, right? And we also recorded whether or not they were wearing helmets. Okay, all right. So suppose we collect data, we record the number of, every time there's an accident, we record. We also see if the person was wearing helmets and whether or not the person had head injuries. That's what we want to know, right? That's the data we have right now. Okay, and we already seen this. This is a cross. How do you call it? This is a cross-tabulated table, right? This cell here represents what? What is this? That's the number of people who suffer head injuries, and they were wearing helmets, but yet they also suffer head injuries. Okay, how many people do you have? How many accidents is there recorded here in my data? Total accident 793. All right. among this, how many people, how many of those accidents, how many of those accidents people were wearing helmets?
75.
No.
147. That's the number of accidents where people were wearing helmets. And 646 were not wearing helmets, most cases. All right. Now, the natural question is, do you have evidence to suggest that when people wear helmets, that reduces the chances of having head injuries? That's the question we want to know. Right? Remember, if you want to pass a law, you have to first show there is a problem and that the law is going to solve the problem. Right? Okay. And that the new law we're going to pass, or the action, right, has the potential of changing the outcome, improving the outcome. Okay. We don't like head injuries. Head injuries are bad for people, right? Okay. Of course. All right. So that's what we want to know. Now the question here is there any association, right? Right. Well, let me take you back a little bit. Now, once I have this data here, I need to think about what? I need to think about what is my outcome. What do you think my outcome is here? What's my outcome here?
No, reduce
Head injury. Head injury is my outcome. I want to know if when I change something about wearing a helmet, what happened? My outcome also changes. That's the same story. I remember, right? When I change X, that's why I changed. And how does Y change? That's what we want to know. Okay. All right. Okay. And so I want to know if the chances of suffering head injuries, right? The chances of suffering head injuries, right? If the chances of suffering head injuries is the same, whether or not someone is wearing helmets. If it is the same, what it means, helmet does not change anything. If it is different, then maybe, we don't know yet, right? Maybe helmet changes something. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So that's the data we have. And again, we have the summary data there, right? And so we should know whether or not there's an association between head injuries and the use of helmets. You want to know if there's an association here, right? Clearly, those people were not randomized to wearing helmet, right? Okay. And we also understand that this, even, the result of this study here, of this analysis, are not causal at all, because they have a bunch of other things that could affect both wearing helmet and also suffering head injuries, right? Maybe that individual is drinking, and because they're drinking, they don't wear a helmet, because and so on and so forth, right? Okay. And so our null hypothesis now is we want to know, our null hypothesis is the risk of having head injuries, right? Remember, that's the outcome. The risk of having head injuries among individuals wearing safety helmet is the same as the risk of head injuries among individuals not wearing helmet, right? Another way to say is, does helmet protect you against head injuries? Okay, and the null hypothesis is saying no. All right. And the alternative hypothesis is the risk of head injuries is not identical in those two populations. Okay. All right. And so what we're going to do, we're going to conduct a test at a 5% significance level. All right. All right. So we know that when we had Y was continuous, and X was categorical, we know what to do, no problem, right? It's, right? If X was continuous and Y was continuous, X was also continuous regression. But now things are a little bit different because both of them are discrete categorical. Okay. In that case, now we're going to talk about proportions. We're going to talk about probability. We're going to talk about risk now. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's look at this. So how do we do this? First, we're going to compute the proportion of people who actually suffer head injuries in each one of those groups there. Okay. The group wearing helmet and the group not wearing helmet. All right. So group one, wearing helmet, right? So we know that 147 of those people were wearing helmet, and then 17 of them suffer head injuries. So I have 17 divided by 147. Let me go back a little bit. Let's look at the data again so we can see, right? So look, I'm looking at the help. All the people that were wearing helmet here. Out of these people, 70 suffer head injuries. So this here is what? Is a proportion of people suffering head injuries in the group that's wearing helmet. Okay? All right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to do? Well, now I'm going to compute the same value, right? For the people not wearing helmet. I want to know the proportion of people who suffer head injuries in the group that was not wearing helmet. Okay. All right. Okay. And that's what I'm going to do. And so then I compute these two proportions here, and then I get 0.16 for the group that was wearing helmet and 0.337 for the group that was not wearing helmet. Really here, if you look at this here, this is really similar to the simple mean we were talking about. Because for every individual, the individual is wearing helmet or is not wearing helmet, it's 0.1. Suffer head injuries or it doesn't suffer head injuries, 0.1. And so if you sum those, if you take the average, the simple mean of these quantities, we get exactly those proportions here. Okay, all right, all right. And usually, that's also called the estimated prevalence of people suffering head injuries in the group that's wearing helmet, and the prevalence of people suffering head injuries in the group that's not wearing helmet. And really, what we're going to do is what? Now we want to know if these two are different based on our data, right? We want to know if these two are different. Are they significantly different from one another? Okay. All right. Okay. And again, the null hypothesis is saying these proportions are the same, right? The proportion of people who suffer head injuries in a group wearing helmet, the proportion of people suffering head injuries in a proportion not wearing helmet, in a group that's not wearing helmet. Are these two the same? Are these two proportions the same? We cannot compare raw numbers, right? Here. Why? Because these two groups are different from one another, right? There are more people that are not wearing helmet compared to people that are wearing helmet. Okay, so if we want to compare them, now we need to compare them in terms of relative frequencies of proportions. Okay. All right. So bear with me here. I'm going to show you a little bit. I'm going to go through this math here. You don't quite have to. But anyway, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to compute a proportion, a combined proportion here for both groups. And then I'm going to use a proportion to compare what? That looks like a Z score, right? Z statistics, Z score. I'm going to compute the Z score there, right? Okay? All right. So based on this data, I'm going to compute the Z score or Z score. Okay. I'm going to compute the Z score. So I compute the Z score, I get this value right here. Right. It's more very large. And of course, I get to compute the p-value. Don't worry about that. I get the p-value of this. What are you going to do based on this p-value here? What do you do? Look at the p-value here on my test. Based on this Z score here, look at the p-value. What would you do?
Is below 0.05.
Yes, it is that. What would you do? What's your conclusion? What would you do? Once you look at the p-value, what do? You compare it to what? Come on, guys. Come on. Come on. You got the p-value. What are you going to do? You compare that to? You have a p-value. What do you do? No. Is that? You what? Sorry? Okay, so let's go back to what we learned before. When the p-value is small, what do we do? When the p-value is
less than
when the p-value is less than what?
also
When the p-value is less than the significance level, what do?
accept or reject.
We reject the null hypothesis. Right? I told you it's the same idea, right? Small p-value, reject the null hypothesis, right? Okay? All right? So this p-value here is small, right? This p-value here is very small, right? It's 0.007 times. You gotta go back, right? This is a very small p-value. I probably should have written it as surface, right? So let me tell you what it is, right? I probably can get it myself. So it's equal to 0.00000 what? 109. You see how small it is, right? Okay. So you compare the p-value to what? 5% is significance level. And then in this case, you will reject the null hypothesis here. This p-value is too small, right? P-value, reject the null hypothesis. Small p-value, smaller than alpha, reject the null hypothesis. P-value larger than alpha, bigger than alpha, you fail to reject the null hypothesis. So here we reject the null hypothesis, and we conclude that, the assumption of, the assumption of no effect, or that wearing helmet doesn't do anything is really not reasonable here, right? According to this data, right? And that maybe, right? Maybe helmet has some protective, all right. So now, in the previous slide, right? Really, what we did, we did a test where we compared two proportions, right? Proportion of people who suffer from head injuries in the group that's wearing helmet versus the group that's not wearing helmet. It's a two group, right? We really compare two groups there. That's really what we did. We compared two groups. All right. Okay. So it turns out that we can achieve the same result using what we call the chi-square test, right? In sort of straight manner, right? We can achieve the similar result using your chi-square test. And so what we're going to do, we're going to start by arranging the data in a format called contingency table, just like we did before, right? Where the row, right? Where in a row you will have your categorical X, in the column you have the categorical levels for Y, just like we did before, right? And then in order to carry out the test, you have to estimate something. So in essence, this is what we had here, right? So what I did here, I flipped the table a little bit. So here I have X for the columns, right? X for the columns and Y for the rows. Okay, all right. And then I have what's counts right here, essentially. All right. And then really the goal will be to compare the proportion of people who suffer head injuries in a group that's wearing helmet versus the proportion of people who suffer head injuries in a group that's not wearing helmets. Okay. All right. So let me go back to my table here. So my table here is really a 2x2 table, right? What we call a 2x2 table, right? A 2x2 table because I have two categorical variables, and each one of those variables has two levels. Okay? So if head injuries or if wearing helmets had three levels, which is wearing helmet all the time, sometimes, and never, what would this table be, you think? It would be what? It would be a 3x2 or 2x3 table, right? Remember, the 2x2 means I have two categorical variables. One of them is a response, the other one is a covariate, and each one of them has two levels. So if one of them has three levels, then you're going to have to change one of those two to three. If both of them have 4 levels, you have a 4 by
Oh, I go.
4 by 4, right? If both of them have, right? So you get the idea. You get the idea. All right. So under the normal hypothesis, right, the risk of having head injuries are the same in those two groups, right? Now, in other words, helmet is not necessary. And so the proportion of people who sustain head injuries, among both sample, right, is equal to that one, right? And the proportion of people who do not experience head injuries is equal to, right, combining all this group is equal to 70.4, right? And then we start to look at compute the proportion of people. Now we're going to try to estimate, or we're going to try to get if this null hypothesis is true, meaning that there's no difference in the proportion of people who wear helmet, the proportion of people who get head injury in the group that's wearing helmet and the group that's not wearing helmet. If there's no differences between that, then we expect to see based on our sample or based on the total number of people in the study, we expect to see a certain number of people falling in each one of the cells, right? So that's the idea there, right? And so then we go on, and so based on that, and then the formula becomes this, and then our test statistics looks something like that, right? We're not going to get too much into details, but really, OI is really what we expect to see. So that's really what we observe, and EI is really what we expect to see if the null hypothesis was true, right? And the idea is what? So I have data. If the null hypothesis is true, I'm expected to see some form of a data. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to see if the data that I actually have observed is actually consistent or not consistent with the null hypothesis. And consistency is really measured by this test statistics. Okay? All right. And so then I'll do that. And then when I do, I get the test statistic of 28, degree of freedom 1. Let's not worry about that for now. But then, remember when I have a test statistics, what do I need? I can compute a p-value, or I can compute what? I can compute. When I have a test statistics, I can compute the p-value for the test statistics, or I can find to make a decision about the null. What do I need? Either I need a p-value or I need a
95%.
critical value, right? Critical value. Remember? Critical value, right? Critical value. All right? Okay. So this here is a critical value. So what it means is any statistics larger than this will be evidence against the null hypothesis. And so since our test statistic is 28.3, which is much higher than the critical value, we will reject the null hypothesis.
This time it's higher than 3.84.
No, not every time. In this specific problem. This critical value is specific to my problem. It's specific to the problem I'm looking at. If you're looking at a different problem, it might be, and I'm assuming that you're talking about categorical, right? You're looking at comparing two categorical groups, right? You're looking at where your response is categorical, your covariate is also categorical, right? So if you are in that framework and you want to see if there's any association between Y and X, then you can use a chi-square test. And of course, the degree of freedom, the characteristic of the chi-square test will be different than what I have here. Because if you have a 4x4, that's different than if you have a 2x2. Okay? All right? Good. All right. So a bunch of things I give you, but really at the end of the day, what you can do, you can use the tab function instead. You use the tab function, you give it this following information, and then at the end you say, give me the chi-square. I want a chi-square test, chi-square, right? Chi2. So that gives a chi-square test, right? And then of course, you will compute the chi-square test statistics. Remember, look, that's very similar to what we had earlier. And what's the p-value? The p-value is something like that, right? Very 0.000. But you had to cut off some of the zeros, too many zeros. Okay. What do we conclude here? Look at the p-value.
It's the
Reject the null hypothesis. Remember, I had a conversation yesterday. I told you, don't get hung up on what test it is. Always think about the p-value in the decision. And the good thing is you only have to remember one direction. Because the other direction, you know. if you are going to reject when the p-value is smaller than alpha, it means that you fail to reject when the p-value is greater than alpha. So you have to remember one direction. One direction. P-value is smaller than alpha, we will reject the null hypothesis. Do not get hung up on what test it is, because chances are you run into multiple tests. But keep in mind that I will reject the null hypothesis whenever the p-value is smaller than alpha. That's what you want to remember. Right? Okay? All right? Okay? And then the good thing with tab, I think we've seen that before. Tab gives you, it will tabulate these things, it will give you the count, it will give you the row proportions and everything for you. Right? We've seen that before. Right? In this table there, cross stability table. Summary. Okay? All right. Now let me look at another example. Let me extend this to another problem there. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to get into this problem, but this problem is a very, very interesting one, because it highlights, it shows you an example of what we call the Simpson paradox, where when you combine the data, there is an association, but then there is an association, potentially, well, not potentially, but there is an association, right? Or at least you tempted to conclude there is an association, but then when you don't combine, when you separate those data, then the association is totally flipped around, right? Okay, your conclusion is totally reversed, right? Okay. But anyway, so now let me look at this table here, right? Where we really want to know what we have here is we have the number of male and female in each one of the academic ranks at the university, right? So in the US, and I think it's probably here too, so you have a structure, you have assistant professor, associate professor, full professor, and so on and so forth, right? So these are, the 5 ranks, 4 ranks that we have in our data here. And then for each one of these ranks, we're looking at the breakdown between male and female, male and female, male and female. Okay? Make sense? All right. So how many people do I have in this sample? Total. 150. Okay. How many women do we have full professors? How many women do we have? Women do we have full professor?
7.
7 full professor women. 7. Okay. All right. Okay. So how many female total do we have in this sample? 52. Nice. Okay. Nice. Now, by the way, what type of table do we have here? Remember I told you 2 by 2 table, right? I told you what it looks like. What would this table be? 2 by 4. 2 by 4. 2 levels for one of the variable, 4 for the other. Okay. All right. 4 for the other. All right. For the other. Now, we really wanted to know if there were any association between, we want to know if the proportion of women in each, right, if there's evidence to believe that there's gender bias across those ranks. Let me tell you, rephrase again what it means. We want to know if the proportion of women in each one of those rank, right? If it's evidence that the proportion of women in each one of those rank is different, right? Okay. We want to know, for example, if the proportion of women in the instructor role tend to be different from assistant role and associate professor role, full professor role. Is there any difference, right? Okay. Is there any gender bias? Well, I guess that's another question, another way to reframe that. Okay. It might be why.
Yeah, there's some different numbers there, but we need to test.
All right. Those numbers are simply at best suggestive, right? Since they're also raw numbers with different ranks having different number of women, or different number of different number of faculty.
Yeah, I think it's very consistent that in each professor level,
yeah,
fewer women than men.
Yeah, well, let's test the data. Let's we're gonna let the data talk, right? Do the talking and the support, but we have a hint there. You have a suspicion on where you should go. That's right. Good. All right. Let's see if the data bears that, agrees to that. So what we're going to do, again, so data will present a random sample of mathematician classified by gender in academics, right? And so the normal practice is that the proportion of women are the same across all academics ranks, right? That is to say, there's no association between gender and academic rank. And the alternative is that the proportion of women are not the same for different academics rank. There is an association between gender and academic rank. And so we're going to select our significance level to be 5%. All right. So remember, I told you to do this test where the way the test goes about is it looks at the data, what they call observed data, what we see, and then it makes an assumption that we really, there's no reason to believe that the proportion of women across those ranks are different. And so if that's true, what data is, what type of data we would have seen if the null hypothesis was true? Then you compute a new data set, and then you compare the new data set to observed data and see how different they are. All right. And so then you go ahead and compute the test statistics, we get the value right here. Right. And then, so since we have a 2 by 4, the degree of freedom for our test is equal to 3, and then we go where our critical value for our test is equal to 7.8. Our test statistics is equal to 1.773. What do you think we're going to do at this stage?
Okay, we're taking now first.
We're going to what?
We're taking now.
Are we? Think about it. Remember, I told you the critical value is like a threshold for your test statistics. If your test statistic is above the critical value, you're going to reject. If it's below, you don't reject. So what's going to happen here? The critical value is where? Let's pull out it if it's not sure. The critical value is 7. Where is our test statistics? If we go from 0 to infinity over here, where is our test statistics? Critical value is over here. Where's our test statistic? Our test statistic is where? Here or here?
Oh, the right hand. Right one.
All right. All right, guys, what? I'm not explaining, right? Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so here's what I'm saying. I have 0 here.
What's the critical value of this 2 by 4?
Yeah, so that's given there. 7.8.
7.8.
Yeah, so 7.8. Where does our test statistics fall? What is our test statistics? Is it equal to?
1.7.
So where is it?
Below.
It's somewhere over here, right? Not even that far. It's somewhere over here. 1.7 something, right? I told you that this is the critical value. It's like the barrier, critical value. Critical value. If the test statistics is less than the critical value, the test statistics is not extreme, we fail to reject. If the test statistics is greater than the critical value, the test statistics is extreme, then in that case, we'll reject the null hypothesis. So what are we going to do here?
We fail to reject something.
We fail to reject the null hypothesis. How would the p-value compare to alpha? Would the p-value be smaller than alpha or greater than alpha?
Greater.
Well, okay, well, so who said greater? Who said greater? Who said greater? Who said smaller? Who said smaller? What about the rest? You got to vote. You got to vote.
They said equal.
Who says smallest? Who says so? Let me start. Who said the p-value is going to be smaller than alpha, than 5%? Who said that? Who said the p-value is going to be smaller than 5%? Who said the p-value is going to be greater than 5%? Oh, you're going to have to vote. You are going to have to vote.
The one they are equal.
No, they can't be equal. They're not equal. Yeah, who says they're equal? Who says they're equal to? Who says they're equal? Who said
Yes.
who said the p-value is less than alpha? Less than alpha. Who said that? Who said the p-value is less than alpha? Who said the p-value is greater than alpha? Who said the p-value is greater than alpha? This is the p-value, right? So the p-value will be greater than alpha. Why? Because the test statistic is less than a critical value, right? If, right? Less than a critical value. Okay? All right? Okay. So, any questions related to this? Any questions? All right. So there's not enough evidence to support an association between gender and academic rank. I wish I can finish the story, but the story doesn't stop there. There's another twist to the story. To be continued.
But what is the 1.7?
1.7 is the test statistics. It's a chi-square test statistics. So what we learned today is a chi-square statistic. So that's the test statistic, chi-square statistics.
And then we compare to the critical.
You compare to the critical value. If the critical value is greater than your test statistics, then you fail to reject your null hypothesis. But if your critical value is less than your test statistics, then in that case, you have to, your test statistics is extreme, and you have to reject the null hypothesis.
I
Yes.
just want to share something that it was surprising that I get from the number in the table.
Yeah.
And it looks like, of course, female is less than male in any level of profession.
Yeah.
But the statistic test just come out like this.
That's right. You know, sometimes statistics has a way of playing or giving us playing tricks on us, right? So you gotta
Maybe you show them again the table of the male and female.
you gotta be careful. Okay?
I think everyone sees the same thing like me. Female is always less than male.
Yeah. All right. There's more to the story than what I show you, but we don't have enough time. Now, I think what's the best way to conclude this? I don't know. There's something that's dear to my heart I wanted to talk about. I don't think we have time for it, but I think what I think would be good though is to try to bring it back. Bring what we learned so far, right, sort of together in the same format we had yesterday, right? Okay, so consulting sort of problem, right? So we got a boss, and then we're going to talk about the problem, and then we're going to talk about the analysis we did, and then you judge us, you ask us questions. Why did you do that? And you tell us, oh, this is not good. Go work again. Go do the analysis again. Okay? Does it make sense? Remember what we did yesterday, right? I need some team members. You come in my team. Yes. Right? So that's what we're going to do again today. So sort of try to bring everything together here in a single all right. So come on. Okay. So again, it was the same study we had earlier. So who I need my team here quickly. We don't have much time. Come on. 5 people. Come on. 5.
I'll be one of your team.
Yes, thank you. And you too. Come on, my team. You too. Yeah, and then
I'm on anyway.
my team. I have a team, my dream team. Yeah. So again, the way it's going to go, right?
Okay.
So I'm gonna come up with a problem, and this problem is not fully, ways we can think about it differently. But so we have a problem, we did an analysis, and now we want you to ask us questions about what we did. Do you agree with what we did? If you don't agree, tell us you don't agree, and why you don't agree, and what we can do different. right? And maybe you need to send us back to school so we can go take some more classes, right? Something like that.
Like on supplement.
That's right, right? So again, it's a vitamin deficiency problem, right? So we have a sample of 2,000 people obtained, and 1,000 are randomly assigned to treatment A, right? And 1,000 are also assigned to placebo, right? And so again, you are the boss here. And then one of our findings in the report says that we found that there's no evidence of association, right, between treatment group and the current health status, right? So, right? So we really want to know if during our randomization, maybe we tend to put people who have good health, poor health in one group, in the treatment group or in the placebo group. So we really want to know if we have some issues, maybe at the randomization step, for example, right? Okay. And so now the first problem says that, and again, so we really want to know if there's any association between treatment groups, assignments, and the current health status, right? Poor, good, excellent. And we use a t-test, to test that hypothesis, and our p-value was right around 0.0067. What do you think?
If you mix the poor and the good are held together.
So okay. So remember when we did the randomization, right? So some people with good health went in treatment A, and some of them also went in treatment B, and the same thing for poor health. Right? But now we really want to know if, for example, if the proportion of poor, if the proportion of people in poor health is the same thing as the proportion of people in good health, and the proportion of people, we want to know if every one of these groups, if these two groups are balanced in terms of right, in terms of or health status, I should say. If those two groups are balanced in terms of health status, is there any association between health status and the treatment groups there? That's really what we want to know. So remember what you got to think about. You got to think about what is the potential outcome, what is the potential covariate, what types of covariate it is, what types of covariate it is, what types of response it is, and then think about what test, and think about the table right there. Okay, let me fill up.
Okay.
Let me add. So this here is a chi-square test, right? Chi-square. Chi-square test. Okay, this right there is a chi-square test we will use. All right. So come on.
Yes.
So here to test that hypothesis, to know whether or not the proportion of people in good health is the same proportion of people in good health in the treatment group is the same as the proportion of people in good health. And our group in a treatment group, what we did is we did a t-test to compare those two groups there. What type of
So we open the phone for question from the journalist, the policymaker.
yeah, but she has a good question. So what type of test we use? We use a 2-sample t-test.
Okay, and my code, and I will give my code to answer.
We use a 2-sample t-test.
Because we need to compare,
Yeah.
we need to compare the intervention group who are provide vitamin A.
Yeah. So now, so some people say, what do you use?
The t-test because it's technically poor food, etc. You use t-test here.
Such a good
Right? Good point, right? She said, wait a minute. Your outcome potentially, your outcome is what? Your outcome is good health, poor health. So categorical. Why is categorical? And then covariate X is treatment is also categorical. But why would you use a t-test? That is such a good question. We don't know.
We do whatever the computer can do for us.
Okay.
Sometimes we use computer not so wise.
Okay. So that's a good one. So clearly here we don't want to use the t-test. We probably want to use the chi-square test, right? Okay. All right. Okay. And so what type of chi-square would this be? What type of table would this be? Would it be a 2 by 3? Excellent.
Why for you?
Good. Nice.
Lost getting us.
เพราะว่าอันนี้เป็น generate มันเป็นกระต่ายตัวอันนี้รอบนักข่าวหลังต่อไปรอบ
Right. And so we also found the second analysis we did, we also found no evidence of association between BMI categories, low, moderate, and high, and the treatment assignment group, treatment A and treatment B. And for that, we use a chi-square test, and the p-value we got is small.
คือมันมีหลักฐานยังยืนแต่ว่าผลมันออกมามันน้อยกว่า 0.05
The p-value, all right?
the people we got is so it's small no evidence of association.
So what's the problem? What's the problem? No, not you. No, you don't say it because we did the analysis. You let me find it.
Okay, that's a question from Dr. Yon.
How is small the period?
So then I'm going to ask the tip, how small was it? Do you remember? You didn't write down? No? Oh, you don't know.
We don't remember.
You know how small.
So we can say 0.0.
Oh, can we get back to you? We don't know how small it was.
I forgot the time.
Okay. That's all right. So what else? Is there any other point? Anything else? Are you okay with the test? And why you okay with the test? And if you're okay with the test, you can say, yeah, this is a good test. This is an appropriate test. Good job, guys. You can also give us compliment, right? So, yeah. Okay. Is that the appropriate test?
It's the appropriate test, but why you conclude that you don't have enough evidence to reject the to show the association? Why your theory is small? I don't understand.
I mean, that's really good criticism. What how there's not much information to extract here because again, there's no number. There's nothing to say, but that's really a good point. Yeah, that's really a good point. Yeah.
I would like to know BMI category your outcomes. Three outcomes.
Three groups. Yeah. So low, moderate, and high.
Three outcomes. Transparent and which one you compare? Like you should extend more a little bit.
Group A, Group B. Group A, Group B. Treatment A and B.
B, but you should tell us about A better than B or B better. But can't use three categories possible by this?
Yes.
Oh, because they have two categories.
Category get more.
You got it.
Yes,
There we go.
but can you explain more about? Maybe you said that if more value is too small, but maybe I would like to know is compared A or B to make the BMI category low, moderate, or high. For BMI category, we didn't select the low and moderate.
We already categorized into three layers of health status, like BMI, and we have two category of groups already.
Yeah.
It is appropriate enough to use a classifier. What do you think? What's your question again?
Like when you tell us about BMI category, but you assign the group, but we would like to know is which one you compare and give the good, moderate or high BMI. Can you explain more about the meaning of your?
I think group A is the treatment group, and group B is the non. Yeah, the placebo.
The question is that do you compare between the group or within the group, right?
Remember, what this is testing whether or not, for example, the proportion of people, right, there we go. If the proportion of people in low BMI, proportion of people in moderate BMI and high BMI are the same across those two treatment groups. That's what we know. Okay. But these are really, really good questions. See the exchange there, right? And so these are, so this is an example. When you write information, you gotta be complete. Otherwise, it's hard to say, but what is small p-value? What does it mean? Right? But if you give a value, then we know. Then we have something to compare, right? So you gotta be precise with the language, right? It's the best thing you can. Sometimes you cannot be exactly precise, but and as you read stuff, you also want to talk about what is that? Why is this value small? You gotta tell me why is it small? Smaller than what? Is 0.67 small? Yes, it's small, maybe compared to 1,000, but so you gotta let us know that. Okay?
We come back within 2 years.
You might just okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So how is observation is difficult?
Because it is greater than 25, we cannot use classes and we use exam.
Good point. Good point. I did not get into the limitation of chi-square here for now. You're right. Good point. I did not get into the limitation of the chi-square.
Number in the cell, right?
Right, number in the cell. Yeah. But the supplementary data is attached to our report. You can see the cells, and I think we have at least 25. So
Good point. Come to join our team.
all right. Okay. So now we're almost time, right? Yeah, I think it's time already. So let's do one more. So to see if there's any association between BMI categories, low, moderate, and high, and vitamin D level, right? We use a regression model. Since the intercept was not significant, we failed to reject the null hypothesis that there is an association between BMI and vitamin D categories, vitamin D level, not categories, but vitamin D levels. So vitamin D level here is measured as a continuous variable, and then BMI here BMI is categorical variable. Yes. So all right. So comment. Anything?
We have intercept. We have BMI category. We have MSG levels.
We did this after drinking.
Yeah. And we did some mushroom alcohol.
Any comment? Anything?
Come on.
One question.
Anything?
This is a phenomenon,
Why do you get model because that your variable is categorical? But you just get model.
So you don't agree with our test?
Yeah, because that regression model we use the continuous and continuous.
Okay. Good point.
All right.
Other more.
That is a very good point. Right. So I want to warn you though. There's a little bit of cautionary tale here. And I'll be honest with you. So it turns out that you're right. The way we define regression here, X has to be categorical. But sometimes in data, you still can use a regression even if your covariate is categorical. But you got to tell Stata is a categorical variable. You have to tell him. If you tell him, it will still fail the regression. So let's not get into the detail, but the point you're making is excellent with respect to what we learned today.
Yeah.
We should not be using regression here. That's good. Okay. But I wanted to put that. Sometimes you will see people running regression where one on the covariate is categorical. But what they do, they put the I in front of the covariate. I, that, and the name of the covariate. And then when you do that, then that tells Stata, hey, this is a categorical variable. And then he has a way of working with that. Okay? All right. But that's a good point.
One more point.
Yes.
You said that it's not significant, but you reject the explanation.
Is what?
For the not, if not significant, we should say.
You fail to reject.
That's true.
Yeah, it's not significant. Yeah. You fail to reject. Yeah, based on the intercept. You see?
Yeah. The PR is above 0.05.
And that's,
So that I actually failed it.
But usually that you teach us that we compare the we will reject the non-hypothesis rate, we look at the p-value. This one you use the intercept. I don't understand.
You're right. You're right. Remember the goal. Remember the goal of this, right? Is to make mistake. I want you to be able to identify them. You're right. First of all, I use the wrong approach. Regression, right? That's one. Second, right? Second, I'm not even looking at the right quantity. Even if regression was correct, I should not be looking at the intercept to determine whether or not the association is significant. I should be looking at the slope if the regression was correct. But the regression is not even correct to begin with. So this whole thing is just incorrect. And that's not good. Okay?
Yep.
So yes, you got it. That's the idea. The idea, remember, is for you to read it and say, hey, what are you doing? This is not correct. This doesn't look good. Right? Even if we wrote it, right? Including me too. So our team wrote it, right? You guys wrote it with me too, right? Yes. Okay.
Join our team.
Okay. Finally, the last point, it doesn't make sense to everyone here. Any questions relating to what we talked about so far?
Okay, yeah.
Anything?
จะผิดได้อยู่อ่ะ
Anything? Okay. One last thing in that sense. So finally, we ran a regression to see if there's a linear association between body weight and vitamin D level, right? For example. So we found that the slope of the line is not significant. In that case, we rejected the null hypothesis of no association since the 95% confidence interval of the slope did not contain 0.
We reject เราต้อง reject ก่อนครับผมเราต้องเตรียม reject
นั่นเรา
แบบนี้นะ
ผิดเมื่อนั้นนะผิดเมื่อ3 ประโยค 2 ประโยค
จบมาได้แล้วตอนนี้จบมาได้
โอ้ได้ก็ต้องบอกแล้วผิดบนไหนพูดแล้วผิด
Come on. So what are we doing?
You want to hear something from policymakers as well?
Yeah, policymakers.
Maybe the result.
Doctors. Doctors, are you going to give vitamin D to the people? Based on our result.
Oh, probably not. No, don't do it. Not yet.
Body weight and vitamin D very well. But I'm not sure the slope or the slope and line is not significant. How can you say about slope? But we like to see the p-value something. And
No. Do you think it's okay?
Yeah, what the problem with slope?
so
What the problem is it? We have the result. We have the slope in our result, you know, and
but I did not confident. I'm not sure because I confused about slope and confidence and no association. It's very
I want you to go back and remember, go back. When we ran the regression, when you ran the regression, right? Remember when we ran the regression, we're looking at the output. And then we look at the output for the regression, right? So we have the estimate, we have the standard error, and then we have a p-value. And so we say there the p-value was testing whether or not the slope is equal to 0. Okay. And then we have a confidence interval. So when the slope was significant, the confidence interval did not contain 0. Okay? Remember that? The slope is significant. The confidence interval, 95% confidence interval, did not contain 0. Okay? All right? So, and the p-value in that case was also smaller than 0.05. Remember, I told you the p-value, right? At least at the significance level of 5% is related to the 95% confidence interval. Okay?
นี่มันผิดอยู่บนสโลปนะ
Okay?
Anyhow, if you agree with that, Professor Nirupai and Kamin will grant us a research.
So simply the sentence here is, it's not there is a problem with the sentence we have here. In one sense, you're saying it's not significant. So that implies a 95% confidence interval does not contain 0. But the next sentence you say that it's not significant, meaning that 95% confidence interval contains 0. And then the next sentence you say it doesn't contain 0. Which one is it? You are confusing. This is wrong. Right. This is a mistake. This is not correct. Okay. All right. So here I'm using significant. I'm talking about significant, and I'm talking about different measures of significant. I'm talking about significant. So if I say significant, then the 95% confidence interval will not contain 0. So it cannot be significant or not significant, and then the 95% confidence interval will not contain 0. You see, those two don't go together. You see that, right? Okay. All right.
Significant, but you said you reject.
Yes, we reject.
So right. So this sentence here alone is correct. But
Yeah.
the previous sentence is contradicting the next sentence. You see that, right? So it's not clear at all. Right? It's not clear at all. Which one are you saying? You say it's significant or it's not? It is significant or it's not significant. It has to be one or it can't be both at the same time. One say it's significant, one say, the first sentence say it's not significant, and it's the next sentence say, oh, it is significant. But which one is it? Right? And sometimes you see those writing, like those confusing pieces of information there. Right? Okay. All right. All right.
Did we get it right?
Yes, we still got more work to do. So I wanted to conclude and say thank you so much. You guys so that's our map a little bit today. So you see me quite a few times today. So get used to that. Okay, so the goal here is really to understand, distinguish between the different types of data you have, identify key study terminologies, right? And then define the difference, at least understand the difference between experimental and observational studies, right? Like, so what can you say? What can you not say? Depending on what types of data you have. All right. And again, I'm going to go a little bit fast because, some of the stuff you already said it, right? Also, the basis of data, right? So remember we talked about, we say, well, some of the basic terminology of data are observation variables and data matrices, right? Okay. So observations, things that you measure, or sometimes use, variables, things, sometimes you haven't measured yet, but that it is a characteristic, and that characteristic changes across individuals, right? The weight, the height, right? So that's the verb. And then when you actually go there to measure the weight, then you get an observation. You get observations. Okay. All right. And all of that is now summarized in big data, in big matrix. Right? And remember, the column of the matrix are what? What do they represent? They represent variables, right? They represent the characteristics of the variables, and the rows represent those individuals. Okay. And we say multiple rows. In some cases, some studies, multiple rows can be, can belong to a single individual. Okay. Remember the example, the consulting example we had yesterday, where you measure pre and post. So 2 rows might be for those individuals at pre and post in those ones. And skip a little bit over that. And so what I just talked to you about is a picture, a picture showing exactly what I just told you about, right? The rows are individuals and the columns are variables. Okay, or characteristics, features. We use all these words. Okay. All right, so what it means is what? So whenever you collect data, it will be preferable to arrange them. Right? That makes it easy to do data analysis, right? Like everybody else. And that's sort of a convention. Sometimes you have it very right, but as much as you can, you should do it. So if you're going to use data, you probably want to have the rows as individuals and the columns like variables. So most of the statistical software sort of require you to have it there. I like to have it there with others. We choose different. And again, of course, we just talked about the variables. And remember, I told you the variables is the characteristic, right? So the characteristic is a variable because it changes the value of the characteristic changes across individuals. It varies. Variables varies, changes. You don't have, you and I don't have the same weights, right? Okay. Although it's weightless, but body weight is different because variables. So body weight is a variable. So when I go to measure the weight, and then I obtain observations. And so we already talked a little bit about this variable. So we're pretty familiar with those, right? We know what we can do. We know the differences between them, right? Okay. All right. And so again, the data set looks something like that. So gender is what? What types of variables is gender here? What is gender? Is what? Categorical? Categorical? Nominal, right? It's order. Right? And sleep here is what? Sleep is number of hours. Hours someone gets a night. So what is that? What is sleep? What would sleep be? It'll be? It'll be, right? It'll be integral variable continuous, right? Okay? In bedtime. What do you feel bedtime is? Right? Maybe we can look at that as maybe categorical, right? Certainly the way it is right now, right? The interval, so it's interval, right? It's a whole range of values from 12 to 2. But certainly, what about countries here? This will be, what is countries? Oh, yeah, countries. What would it be? Right? This would be categorical. Remember, I told you that. Do not look at the values of the variable. Do not look at the observation of the value of the variable to determine what type of variable it is. Why? Because I can still decide to categorize, or I can decide to label the categorical variable using numbers. But it still doesn't mean that you can add them, right? So you gotta understand that there's no way I can add Vietnam and Laos. I don't know what country I'm gonna get there, right? I cannot add them. Right? I cannot combine them. Okay. And so then I know automatically that this has to be okay. Right. Okay. All right. So let's look at a small exercise. What types of variables do you remember walking in an emergency room on one day, July 4th, right? We do here is July 4th is the Independence Day of it's free words. And so people get a little bit crazy there, right? Okay. So what type of variable would that be? The number of people that goes to the hospital. That would be numerical discrete. Excellent, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So data from an experiment evaluating effectiveness of a new drug in reducing the number of migrants. So the data matrix contains the variables, a group of variables to indicate the experiment group for each participant, control or treatment. So we want to see if the drug reduces the number of migrants. And the variable number of migrants represented the number of migrants during the 3-month period. Right. Classify both variables. The number of migrants, what do you think it is? That is. So we have an inclination, we have two groups, right? People who take the medicine and don't take the medicine. And for all these people, we count the number of migrants they have. Right? Over 3-month period, we give them the medicine. For some people, migraine is really bad. They get it, it's really, really bad. Okay. And so the goal is really to come up with the medicine so that people, when they take the medicine, they no longer have migraine head. So some people who get the medicine and other people who get the control, right? The placebo. Now, the idea is to compute to, at the end of the study, right? Whenever we have a migraine, we write it down. At the end of the study, during the period, I had 5 migraines, I had 10 migraines. So what's the number of migraine will be? Numerical discrete, right? And of course, the group here will be categorical, none, right? Remember, it's gone, what we talked about there. Here, the group invariable treatment or no treatment, this will be categorical variable. That will help us to distinguish. And then for that case, we will be interested in knowing whether or not the number of migraine in each one of those groups is different, right? If it is different, right, or if the number of migraine is less in the treatment group, what does it mean? That means that the medicine is working, right? Because when you take a medicine, you want to reduce the number of migraine. If the medicine is working, then people who are taking the medicine should be getting less number of migraines compared to people who are not taking medicine. Okay? And then we talk about the relationship between variables, right? Really what we're trying to do all the time is when we have a study and we measure variables or characteristics of the population, we want to understand how we are related. And the idea is, if you understand how we are related, then we want to know, if you understand how we are related, then we can understand, we can start to think, what happened if I change those variables? What happened if people eat a little more vegetable? What happened if people walk a little more? Right? What happened if people eat a little more fruits? Would the health outcome change? You know what we're trying to do, scientific. That's the goal of scientific thinking. If I change this, what happens? Okay. Or in some cases, I want to know people who are doing different, who are eating different food. What's the outcome? What's the health outcome? Is there a difference between people who are eating different food? Is the health outcome different? We want to understand that all of this is related to relationship. How one of the variables related to the other. Keep that in mind. Okay. And then of course, if I have continuous variables, I can get, if I can look at the scatter, just like we see for regression. And then whenever you look at the association, we can see whether or not there's positive association or negative association. All right. And when the positive association is really that when one goes up, does the other one go down? But if you eat more fruit, does your health outcome get better or it doesn't change at all? That's what we want. Right? Okay. So if you eat more fruit, when your health outcome get better, go up. Right? If the health score, higher health score means that you're in good health. If you eat more fruit and then your health score go up, then that's what positive. That's an example of positive association. When ones go up, the other ones go up. Right? When food consumption goes up, when physical activity go up, right? Or right, there we go, right? You can imagine many other cases, right? When breastfeeding, the prevalence of breastfeeding go up, then we see that kids have good health overall. There's positive association. When one go up, the other ones go up. There's a negative association, really is not in the case where when one goes up, the other ones go down. So that can also be, we can also frame the same problem as when breastfeeding goes up. The prevalence of malnutrition goes down, or infant mortality goes down. That's a negative association. When ones go up, the other ones go down. Negative association. Okay. All right. All right. And so we can also have cases where that not happen. So when one goes up, the other one doesn't really change much. That's independent. That's the case of independent. Namely, this one is now related to the outcome. It's independent. Right? When one moves, the other one really doesn't do anything. Right? Or when one moves, the other ones can go up or down. You know. Yes. Okay, so now let's look at the small example. Here we have this animal here on the render, the length, the head length, and the skull. This is the data we have here. Based on this data, what would you say? What do you think is going on here? What's the relationship between head length and the skull? Skull width, right? So head length, right? Head length and skull width, right? Something like that. Yeah. Okay. What do you think? Well, how would you characterize this association between these two variables there? The length and width. What would you say it is? What's happening? What's the trend? What's the general trend in this data? You have a positive, increasing positive association. You have positive association. When one goes up, the other one also tend to go up, right? So when I have small head length, I also have small skull. Or when I have high head length, also have high skull width. Right? So this is a positive association. So head and length are positively associated. Okay. But again, remember, I'm not saying that head length causes the skull width to be big, to be, long. That's not what I'm saying. This is not causality. I'm just saying an association. Okay. Right. All right. And again, similar a little bit to what we talked about before, when we see, when we look at regression and when we look at all the other things, we really want to know if the exploratory, one of the key goals here in most analysis studies, we really want to know exploratory variables or covariate of exposure really have some effect on the response variable. Okay. We will be interested. Okay. All right. Or in other words, that's the response variable. Is the response variable different depending on the level of the explanatory variable covariance? That's really what we want to know. That's really what we want to know. All right. Now, to do that, we usually are in two settings, right? We have a setting we either are in a setting where we observe the study, right? We have observational data. And what really means is that we just collect the data without really intervening, right, on how things are happening, right? We are collecting the data as is. We are collecting, we are understanding how these variables are related to one another as is without really necessarily building, right? And so, and this type of observational data on surveys, reviews medical record, or we follow cohorts, cohort of participant over time and we give the association variables. And I think I talked a little bit about that, right? Observational study. Okay. I want to understand I want to understand if there's any association between amount of foods kid eats and obesity level, for example. Or I can go collect school-age children, select multiple schools, school-age children, and then survey them. How much food do you eat? How much food do you eat? Did you have any serious illness in the last 20 months or so? Observation side. And then, the other one, right? The other experiment, right? Where, the other cases, the slightly higher level now is the experiment where we actually intervene, we change things. Okay. Change things, right? And so, some folks in the field of causality like to think about this as sort of a ladder. Imagine it's like a kid, right? When we are a kid, what do? Imagine a baby who's just born in his bed. What does he do? He doesn't do anything. He can't do anything, nothing, right? We have to do things for him. So what does he do? What is he doing really? He's looking. He's looking. He's looking at the world, right? He's learning stuff, right? Even though he's learning there, he's still learning stuff, right? He's seeing what mama is doing, what dad is doing, everything, right? He's not intervening. He's not changing anything. So he can't move anything, right? Then what happened? He grows up a little bit. And then what happened? Now he can talk. Now he can move the table. Now he can go get the fruit. Now he can go get his bottle or his plate to eat. So similar, people like to think about this as sort of ladder of knowledge and ladder of causality. You start observing the world. You do not touch it. Like a baby, you just observe what's happening around you. And then you try, maybe this is related to this. And then you get a little more sophisticated with this. You're like, wait a minute, let me see, can I intervene? Can I change some things? You see that happen. Okay. All right. So you're going harder. And then another type of thing I'm going to talk about here. You start to imagine, right? Stop. All right. But one big difference between these two is that association, right? Is that in observational study, we talk about association. In experiment, right? We can talk about causation, and that's provided that the experiment is well done, right? Okay, that's provided that the experiment is well done. Okay, and of course, association does not. You hear that a lot. Association does not imply causation. And causation can only be inferred from randomized experiment. I'm not going to get into the issue. I know a lot of people who disagree with that very statement there. But for this class, we're just going to stick with the fact that we can only make causation from randomized experiments. Okay. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about observational studies and sampling strategies. And so this is very similar to what we've seen before. And so again, whenever we have a study, we start with the population of interest, right? That's what Dr. Ninopa talked about yesterday. You got to start with the population of interest. So what is your population of interest? Right? What is your population of interest? You got to define that. And once you define that, then you can think about ways to sample, to obtain a sample from that population that's representative of the population. Because remember, ultimately, your goal is to do inference, right? Okay, to learn about the population characteristic. What is really happening there? Okay, all right. Okay. All right. And so, an example of research question can people become more efficient runners on their own merely simply by running more? So in other words, like, can someone just be an excellent, can be a better runner just simply by running instead of having to learn techniques or techniques to run better? Okay. And so, of course, another case here is the population of interest here is, all people, right? It's simple here would be a group of adult women who recently, who recently joined, it was a group of adult women who recently joined a running group, right? So imagine we get in a sample like that, right? And so, because here, so we started out here with saying that our population of interest is all people, but our sample is only adult women, right? So this is potentially an issue there. Right? So what it means, right, is that the finding of this result cannot really be extended to all people because our sample only contains women, right? The population doesn't only contain women, right? It contains women and men, right? So clearly, since we only collect sample of adult women, this sample might not be representative, right? And so it might be hard to generalize to the population. Now, another way we can select is really to use census, and to use the idea where we can sort of, that's the idea where we include sort of everybody in the study, right? And we already know this is too expensive and this is rarely done. And so I think this is really to the question Tom was asking. So what happened if we can sample everybody? Yeah, in some cases we can, right? But it's very expensive and it's prohibitive and not really usually not done. All right. And so again, one hallmark of observational study is really that we obtain data, we collect data without really changing anything. We observe data, right? So remember that the analogy is that we like kids and we're looking at the world and we're not touching anything, we're not moving any table, we're not moving any plate, nothing, right? We're observing the data as it is. And the result of this observational study can generally only be used to establish an association between an exposure, exploratory response. Why can we do that? Well, it turns out that in observational study, right, there's always a worry of potential confounders, right? Remember, I gave you the example a little bit about confounders, right, yesterday, where if there's no confounders, then the exposure affect the response in specific ways. But because of the confounders, right, depending on the value of the confounder, now the effect of covariate on the response is slightly different, right? Because that's important. Because again, the confounder affect both, right? Both the outcome and the exposure of the covariate. And so this is really one of the biggest threats why we cannot make causal statement from observation, because we have no guarantee that readjusted or recontrolled for all people numbers. Okay, all right. All right. So for observational study, we can have the prospective study where we identify individuals and collect information as event unfold. So we look at them starting point today onward, right? Or retrospective study where we start looking at, we collect them, we enroll them in the study today, and then look at what happened. Look at what happened in the past. So retrospectively, right? All right, and of course, almost all the statistics. Remember all the t-tests, all the z-tests, the regression, the two-sample t-tests we talked about, relying on the fact that the sample you have is random. So if the sample is not quite random, then all those tests here are not, you will have problem if you use those tests to really test hypothesis, right? So randomness is really the key thing that's driving the quality of this test. All right. And so if observational data is not collected in a random fashion, then this estimate might be severely biased, and the error associated with the estimate are not really reliable. So what it means is you really cannot use the t-test, z-test, all these other tests we talked about. And of course, this estimate that you have there might not be good at all. All right. And the most common random sampling techniques are really simple, stratify, cluster, and so on and so forth. And then we talk a little bit about simple random sample, where we just randomly select every, individual in the population and then include that, and some of the limitation is that it does not guarantee a perfect sample, right? So a subgroup of the population could be left out, right? So if there are subgroup in your population and they use a simple random sample, some of the simple random sample might not include a smaller group of individuals you have in the population. And then you have the idea of stratified sample. And so that's the case where you create strata of individual or observation. And then really the strata really determined by sort of a characteristic of these individuals. So you can use gender, ethnic group, and so on and so forth to determine those, those strata. Unfortunately, once you do that, then the analysis becomes a little bit difficult, right? Then you have to really see a statistician to help you with that. Now, also, you can use the idea of cluster sampling, which really, if there is an inherent sort of a grouping of your sample already by location, by school, and so on and so forth, you can decide to use sort of the idea of clustering there, where you select the schools first, and then you select the student within the schools. But one limitation is that the cluster might be too large and difficult to identify, and then you also have to, in this case, you will have to really use sophisticated statistics for the analysis. And then you can have multi-stage sampling. All right. So whenever you have your sampling, right, there's always, your thing is sample, there's always a problem or potential sampling bias, right? And the sampling bias can be simply due to non-respondent, right? So suppose you go to a school and then, you want to sample with kids to be included in your study, right? Okay. And then, for example, you go on Friday, only on Friday, right? And then it turns out that, well, some kids actually don't come to school on Friday, right? So most kids, for example, will not have a chance to be included in the study, right? Or some kids will simply not respond, right? And also voluntary response, right? And of course, convenient sampling, which is also a potential, which also can be a potential problem. Now, let's quickly talk about experiment. And again, the hallmark of experiment is that researchers sort of perform some inclination, right? Okay. It's usually inclination in the way people receive, by randomizing, some type of treatment, right? If the assignment is done randomly, then we have a randomized experiment. And randomized experiment are really fundamental, for us to make causal inference between, to know whether or not the activation is actually causally related to the response that we have. Okay. And these are sort of some of the principles from the experiment, right? So you have to have a control, you have to randomize, you have to replicate, and potentially use to block if it's variables are known or suspected to affect the response. Okay. So similar a little bit to what Dr. Nilupa talked about before. But really what I want to do, I want to focus on the last slide here. So I think the last slide sort of brings everything sort of together. Right. So I really like picture to really try and understand things, right? So here I'm showing you what happened when I have a random assignments, right? And then when I have a random sampling, what happened, right? In the study. Whether or not I have random assignment, whether or not I have a random assignments. So this table is saying that, for example, so if I have a random assignment, so if these individuals are randomly assigned to a treatment, right? Randomly assigned to a treatment. And also my sample is obtained in a random fashion. So I randomly obtain individuals, right? And also randomly assign them to treatment. This is ideal. This is the perfect basis. Ideal experiment. That's provided that all this the sampling and the assignment are done, in a careful way. And so then in that case, I can have causal conclusion into this generalizing to the whole population. Okay. Right? But if I have random assignments, but no random sampling, right? I still can make causal conclusion, but only for the sample that I have. most experiment there. But if I have no random assignments, right? No intervention whatsoever, but yet I still have a random sentence, I still can have a causal conclusions, right? Correlation statement, the sort of generalized correlation there. This is where most observations study fall. And then if I have no random assignment, no random sampling, no causal conclusion, correlation statement only valid for the sample that I'm looking at. Okay, all right. And so this is a chart you can keep in mind as you think about designing your study and think about what are the implications and what you can say. Okay. Yes.
So in a lot of studies, I would imagine it's that random sampling, like you say, most experiments, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like for example, if we want to see a treatment of the disease and get recruit from the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
like we have to, there's no list of who has the disease that we can randomly sample from. And many other kinds of studies are kind of like, we put a notice and attract volunteers. So does that mean that you cannot draw any inference for the population? Because our goal is to make a statement about the larger population. If you have liver cancer patients, we do a drug versus placebo, or standard of care versus new drug or something. The purpose is really to say this is a new drug better for all liver patients,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
Yes. And is that still not? Is it not valid then, from what you're saying, or is it with caution, or?
Yes, I'm not so much saying that it's not valid, but it's certainly with caution, right? Because this whole table here, I want to argue, and you will agree with me that if I presented this somewhere, I would be bombarded with questions and like, yeah, I don't agree with this. So I think this is sort of the raw brush, sort of the big brush, because again, it really depends on the situation you're in and the special circumstances you are in, right? I'm not saying that you just cannot do it, but I think it's more of a cautionary tale, right? Probably need to be a little bit careful on what exactly gets said.
Yeah. And I think that's also why in clinical trials, they have, you have your results from where you've done your, not random sampling, but your random, you may have had an assignment, but then when a drug becomes used in the population, then they're able to sort of gather more data on other side effects and, kind of looking at the differences between effectiveness and word efficacy. Thank you, efficacy. Word efficacy and effectiveness. So then you're able to look in the more general population, but at first you're only able to make those causal conclusions for the people.
As you know, so I think you always, as I'm presenting this, to be honest, in the side I'm cringing because there are some of these I don't quite buy by, honestly, right? So I don't believe that. Well, I don't believe that the only way that you still can make gain considerable information or even close to causal statement. If you have an observation study, we have many other cases. Right? We'd be able to do that, but let's not get into that. But yeah, I think those things can get so problem specific, and that is, I guess, I always find it difficult to just have to define, everything sort of one umbrella. But I do believe that you can you can sort of use that as a bigger map and of course consult with a statistician, with a statistician as you really seriously thinking about, implementing your studies, and then what are the implications and what are the things, what are the, what a takeaway you can, or what a statement you can make based on the research.
I think it's a good point because it's sort of like just even from your like these things are not absolute.
Yeah.
It is a matter of debate.
Yeah.
And when you make a conclusion, you have to be ready to defend your conclusion because it's not a true false thing. It's a thing that is discussed and debated and unknown.
Yeah.
And so you have to be confident in your inference. In your conclusion.
Right.
So the frame of reference
Right.
within, that you can start from, and then exactly, or think like, I want to have, if I want to be able to draw these kinds of conclusions, I should think about random sampling or random assignment, just taking it into consideration as you create your study and plan your methods. But you're absolutely right. Everything is a gray area.
Yeah. And I want you guys to get involved. Here's what's happening, right? If you thought that statistics always has a single and definite answer, well, you're in for a shock. It almost never happens. It almost never happens. Very, very few cases where we all agree, right? But the key principles is to be honest about what you did, right? And you could be honestly wrong about the assumptions you made. It's okay, but just be upfront about these assumptions. This is how we selected. This is how we did the study. This is how we select individuals. So here's what I'm saying. If you didn't randomly select an individual, you cannot say I randomly selected. You cannot say that, right? Okay. And then it's really important to understand what it means to randomly select individuals. That's really the key takeaway. Okay.
Almost never. Random selection.
Yeah.
Rare.
So sorry, based on your question, question for us. Because I already wanted to think, well, with I did in hospital settings, consider as RTP and experimental study, in which situation should be random and in case of in case of assignment with it, which is not random. Why would that happen?
So if to do perfect random selection, you have a list of the whole population. Some kind of list, electronic paper, whatever it is, to have everybody, and then you can randomly pick using a computer program or something. But usually that's not possible. So an example is you want to work on liver patients. You don't have a list of all patients, maybe in your clinic, but someone goes to another hospital. Like there's no national registry of liver cancer. What maybe there's maybe not, probably not, and some people not diagnosed and all that. So the sample you get, if you work in the national hospital and you take patients, you do a very nice study, it still may not really generalize to other people in the capital city, to the whole country, but the rural areas, who knows? The inference is a little bit different, and that's a problem of not exactly random sampling, and therefore you're not sure of the generalizability, but you can really be very clear, as Professor Roger is saying, is be very honest how you did it, think very hard about the limitations, and then write all the limitations where it might be true for urban population. Maybe we need more data for rural population. Maybe it's true for Laos and not for Thailand, something like that. But it's still good, and you can be very clear about it when people use that information. And the thing is, people will challenge you. right? Unless something is perfect, we will challenge. Others, you know, you go to a conference or you write a paper, you give a report, they will say like, it's not perfect. Random. So you have to be ready to make the argument. This information is useful with these limitations and be comfortable to justify them, right? And it may not be 100% knowledge. And like even very experienced people, if you ask Kate and Roger might have one view and Kate might have a different view. And so you have to have a discussion, and that is very normal. This kind of constant challenging and checking because we don't know the truth. We have to check each other. We need to get used to being comfortable, always defending your arguments.
And know your population. And I think that's a key piece is when you don't have random sampling, like I said, which is really rare. Understand the population that are participating in your study and be able to compare them with the population you'd like to generalize to. And then you can say, well, my population in this study had more women than the general population, had a higher income. That if you are able to enumerate and describe your population, then you can say, yes, it's really, these are the people who were in the study, so we know we can draw some conclusions about these people, but we don't know how that's going to change in the broader population. And that's okay. That's how almost all research works, because I'm trying to actually think of a study where you can get a random sample other than maybe a national, it's just hard to get a random sample of a total population.
Once you got the big blocks.
Yeah, you have to have.
Wait, in some, sometimes it's possible, right? Like if you work in a province and there's even in a village, there's a register.
Yes.
Who is living in households in the village.
Yes, when your total population is smaller.
Right,
Yeah.
but if you're trying to do most of the time it's, right. There's some rare cases when you can, of course, do it. If you can get the list of all people in this village and randomly pick them, because there's a office in the village or the leader can give you the list. That's wonderful. But most of the time we can't, and sometimes the population, like a population with a certain condition, and you don't know that who has a condition with some condition. How do you do it? That is why, like, for example, when I did that example with malaria, we took all of, so another option is like you take everyone that you have access to and you screen them for those conditions, right? But even then, it's like, that was women come for antenatal care. Well, think of the women who don't come for antenatal, right? You're missing them. Is your conclusion valid for them? Like, you don't know, maybe not. But you do the best you can. And you build knowledge that way.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and I think that's really the key thing. Whenever we are looking at, effect and stuff, it's really the approach is triangulation, right? So not a single study will have complaints, other people will come and sort of attempt to do the same thing and see if we can get at the same quantity there. So you don't have to feel the burden of, I have to, just because it's not random sample, it's not valid. It could be a hint of where really the true effect is. And so, but the key thing again for me is just be honest about what you did. Talk about the limitation, mention this as being limitation, and then let the reviewers of what happened did. That's what we can do. That's what you can do at that specific time. But whatever effect or whatever you have estimated can be potentially useful, or maybe this book to really not be, to really not be that. But still, it's good to put it out, and then again, while being upfront with everything. I think for me, that's really what I'm saying.
That was enough. ต่างๆเราก็คือถ้าคือการทดลองนะถ้าการจับทดลองจริงๆนะถ้าทดลองดีมันก็ผู้ที่ทดลองกลุ่มหรือว่าผู้ทดลองต้องถือซุ่มเขาม่วงเนาะผมไม่เอาสเปเรื่องเขาแต่ในกรณีที่อาจารย์ที่รู้ว่าเราถามก็คือว่าเห็นอยู่หลายๆหมอในการทดลองมันก็บ่ได้ที่เป็นต้องซุ่มเขาแถวว่าก็คือการเจ้าจับกลุ่มเทียบอย่างเลยอย่างประมาณนั้นเนาะแล้วก็เลยบอกว่าการอาจารย์สอบถามเลยบอกว่ามันบ่มีความสมบูรณ์แบบเสมอไปถ้าเขามีรายการประมาณนั้นเป้าหมายที่ว่ามีในรายการที่ว่ามีหลายคนนะเขาสามารถซูมได้ที่ว่าเป็นตัวแทนของประเทศโอเคซูมได้หรือเป็นตัวแทนของ corporation ใหญ่ซูมได้แต่ว่าบางเคสอาจจะเป็นที่นี่ก็จะต้องมองได้หนึ่งนะเนาะมันก็มันไม่ได้มีหลายแบบนั้นเนาะก็คือขึ้นกับตัวจริงว่าเขาจะมีการไปซูมแนวไหนหรือว่าที่เขามีการเลือกผู้ประกอบขึ้นแนวไหนแล้วขึ้นกับความสมัครใจอันนี้ขึ้นกับเงื่อนไขบริษัทผู้ว่าทุกการทดลองจะมีการสมบูรณ์แบบเสมอไปเนาะประมาณนั้นทุกเรื่องกันแต่เราต้องอ่านเกี่ยวกับตัวสายเรื่องทดลองมันบอกเสมอไปตามทฤษฎีของเราก็คือว่าเพอร์เฟกต์เนาะแต่ต้องเห็นผู้วิธีการ
So I think the concluding note will be that certainly.
Sorry, one more word.
Okay.
แปลว่าสำคัญเป็นเขาแปลผลนะเขาที่แปลผลเขาเป็นตัวแทนของกลุ่มคนกลุ่มใดเนาะมันจะมีข้อจำกัดของมันในจุดนั้นอีกคือเราเนาะ
So yeah. So maybe the final word in this would be that. Because certainly bad sounds like bad sounds like man, there's nothing we can do. No. So not desirable. I'll change bad to not desirable. But certainly not hopeful, right? I mean, you still can get some information from that. So all right. So that's what I have for this. Now let's look. So is it stay one more time or okay, let's see. So all right, so okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the experiment now. So let's go back to I'm sorry, I know we sort of jumping here. But let's go back to regression, right? And then in the afternoon, we're going to talk about. I promised I was going to try to talk about simple size calculation. I could not. I had to look for my slides, and I could not find my slides. Those were unfortunately not in the module there. So I think I'll talk a little bit about a limited version of it, just based on the C-test. But easily extended, we can easily extend that to the T-test. And then for proportion, we're probably going to do something with it. All right? So that's why I have a simple size calculation. Anybody have any material on simple size calculation?
I need to work on it for next week.
Yeah, we have. And I think in one maybe module 6 or something that we talked about, using a T info.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say it. But
Yeah, I do do it.
yeah. But does it have a set of slides or not? I do this. I think I couldn't see that. And then yesterday I spent quite a bit of time trying to go back to my own. I just could not find it.
Or if you haven't, it's being recorded and screen captured. I think. So maybe. So in which case we can use. I think we're on a simple.
Okay. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure something out here. I'm sorry.
You stay on more.
Yeah. Okay. See how, yeah. Okay. So now, yesterday we talked a little bit about linear regression, right? And we had a little exercise plotting the line. I don't know if I should do that again. Maybe it'll be quick. But yeah, we talked a little bit about.
It's very
I think. Let me go back here. Right, let me go back here. Okay, so yesterday we talked a little bit about linear regression, right? And then again, the idea was that we were trying to understand how Y changes and X changes. That's what we want to know. And usually the idea is really that if we know how Y changes, then maybe we can, if we know how changes in X affect changes in Y, then what can we do? Maybe we can set up an intervention, right? Or we can make a recommendation to say, hey, change your X. If you change your X, maybe your Y will be over here. That's that. Okay, if you could do that. And of course, assuming I have a bunch of other things, we're not going to get into that right now. Let's assume that the story is as simple as this. Okay? All right. And so, but yesterday when we started here, I like to think about, I like to provide a map of where we are. Remember that the box I had yesterday? All right. All right. So, but yeah, so this basic idea here, you know, we talked about here, right? It's really what we're going to try to get at. What we're going to try to understand in a linear regression problem. We're going to try to see what is now, instead of talking about changes in Y, we're going to talk about changes in average values of Y. Right? Average values. Average values. Okay? All right? So that's the basic idea there. And again, the slope, right? And so the linear regression we're going to look at here is, since now we're moving from statistics, we're moving from pure math, right, or math, to statistics. Now, if I get rid of this is essentially, the rest of the equation is really similar to what we've seen earlier. All I did is I just confused you with some quick letters. I just added quick letters. Okay. And again, the idea, we really want to understand what happened. Changes in the average value of Y in X changes by submagnitude. All right. That's really what we want to know. And again, so beta 0 here is going to represent the intercept. Beta 1 is going to be the slope. Y is going to be the response. You know, whatever characteristic of interest we're interested in. Right. And then X is a covariate. Exposure, however you want to call it. Sometimes we call it independent variable, explanatory variable, so on and so forth. All right. And so we see this problem, we see this example yesterday, right? Like where we have, you know, percentage of high school graduate, we see poverty, and then he has his data here, right? And then clearly we have you know, we assume that there is a linear relationship between percentage of high school graduate and percentage of poverty. You know, we assume that there is a linear relationship between those, and maybe also the scatter plot support that assumption. And now we want to know what line, right? What line we can use to really describe the relationship between X and Y. That's what we want, right? What line, what equation we can use to describe the relationship between the covariant Y and really the response, right? Our response of interest, right? Okay, that's really what we want to know. And so you can see here, if you have a scatter plot, you have a bunch of lines that can go through the scatter plot, right? But what we want to do, we want to select one line. We want to select what we're going to call the best line. What is the best line that can help us get an equation like this? That's what we want to know. Yeah. What's the best line that can describe that equation? All right. So then the idea we're going to use to find the best line is the idea of least squares. So what does it mean? It means, well, since we have a bunch of data, we think there's a linear relationship, right? It's kind of a linear relationship between our exposure X or covariate X and a response Y. And we know that there's no line we can find that will go through every single point. What we're going to do is we're going to find a line that misses the least. It doesn't go through all the points. If we miss many points, but overall, it will be the line that misses the least. All right, so that's the least square line. Okay. And now, here what I'm showing you here. So, for example, if you look at this data here, you get every dot here represents a coordinate. That's what we did to plot this here, right? To plot the dot here, right? That's what we did. We had a coordinate, we have X, we have a Y. X, Y. So every dot here, this dot here represents what? What's the X value and what's the Y value of this dot here? The X value is equal to 1, the Y value is equal to -1. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I'm repeating from all my data sets. All the values in the data. And that's how I got this dot here. So for this dot here, there's the X value, which is the percentage of high school graduate, there's the Y value, percentage poverty. Just like I did before. So this small example now become big, where X is the percentage of high school graduate, Y is the percentage of people poverty. So this small idea here is really what I'm doing here. And the green line now represents how much I miss. Remember, I'm trying to get a line, trying to get an equation for a line. I'm trying to get an equation, I'm trying to get a slope, I'm trying to get an intercept. And so that's really what the red line looks like. So I want to find a line that will go through the data. It will miss the point, but it will miss the least. Right? And really what I call miss here is really the green line here. You see that, right? The green line here represents the misses. For example, for this line here, you see the miss here is relatively small compared to this miss over here, and compared to this miss over here. So the green line here is very longer compared to over here, compared to over here. Okay? Yeah? And so it turns out that the green distance I have here, the green line here is really what we call residuals. Right? What's left after you go through the data, essentially, after you define the regression line, the residuals. All right? For some of them, the residual is what? 0. For others, it's very high. Okay. High. Yeah. And so, once identified, and you can see here, for example, for this data point here, the residual is equal to 5.4. For this other line here, the residual is equal to negative 4.16. Right? Very, right? For some of them, the residual is negative, for some of them, it's positive. Okay. All right. And so, now, once you estimate that equation, right? Once you get the slope and the intercept, right? So Stata, when you put in the data and then you run this function, Stata will just do what I just told you about now and estimate the intercept and the slope. Okay. How do you think? So if this is my slope here, is the equation of my line, how do you think? How would you go about getting this red line, you think? Maybe let's not talk about it. No, let's not talk about it. Okay. You know, but this here is, is the equation of my line, regression line. It's called a predictive equation. So what it means is, if you fill in X, it will give you a predicted value of what the model thinks Y ought to be for the X. Okay, all right, it's predictive equation. If you feed in the X, it will tell you what the Y value ought to be. The X. Okay, and of course, if you want to draw the line, you need what? You need two X's, and then once you have X's, you got that, and then you draw the red line I was showing you earlier. Okay, all right. And so we can do this instead, all right, using the function regress. Right? And so if we do that, instead I will estimate those, it will estimate again the slope, it will estimate the intercept and the slope, and it will tell you something about the quality of your model there. Okay, and so we've seen that a little bit earlier. So our adjusted squares are really, they tell you here about the quality of the fit, right? So how strong the linear association, how well the model performed in explaining variability in the model. And so you really want the R square to be high, right? And so if there is really a strong linear relationship between Y and X, your covariate and your response, this adjusted R square will tend to be very high, very close to 1. And here we have right around 80%, right? And so that's not really bad at all because we only have one covariate in the model, and this covariate alone is explaining 80% of the variability in Y. So that's not bad. Okay. Well, that's not surprising because earlier we see a strong relationship between Y and between body length and weight anyway. So that's not too surprising that we have that. Now, so this here, this first part of the output, this first part, so that's adjusted R square. This first part of the output is really what we call the regression model. The regression model. Analysis. Some report the regression model here, right? And again, R square, adjusted R square there. And then on the bottom, I have the estimate of what? I have the estimate of the slope and intercept. Okay, estimate of slope and intercept. And I also have a p-value, right? I also have a p-value in the confidence interval. Okay, all right. So based on this confidence interval, what can you say? Remember, we told you that, well, we can sort of use the confidence interval to make a decision about an Apat's test, right? About the parameter of interest. So look at this confidence interval. What can you say about this confidence interval? What do you note about this confidence interval?
Very precise.
Very precise. Narrow confidence interval. What else? What else? What do you note about this? What else?
Below Z.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh, it says, oh,
Yeah, but anyway, so you have either one of them, yeah. What do you note? Yeah, well, not so much rejected, but certainly, yeah.
it's below one, below one.
It's below 1. Okay, fine. What else? Look at it. Okay. It's narrow. Okay, yeah, it's very narrow. What else? Yeah, so this here, this first, the slope, the confidence interval for the slope is definitely positive, doesn't contain 0. But for the, say that. So this confidence interval here does not contain what?
Yes,
It doesn't contain
one.
It doesn't contain 1. It doesn't contain 0 also, right? It doesn't contain 0 over here, right? It doesn't contain 0 over here, right? It doesn't contain 0. And also for the intercept, it doesn't contain 0. It's negative and insignificant. All right? Because remember, if the slope of the line is 0, what does that mean? There's no relationship between Y and S can change all you want. Why really?
I was confused a little bit with one.
Right, but with the argument or something. Yeah. Right. So this slope here doesn't contain 0. So if I were to do a test for hypothesis with the significance level of 5%, right? If I wanted to test whether or not I wanted to test the null hypothesis, that the null hypothesis, that the slope is equal to 0, what would happen here?
If it contains.
No, there's no if no more. So now you gotta be. So again, if I wanted to test the null hypothesis that the slope is equal to 0, versus an alternative that says the slope is not equal to 0, what will happen here based on this confidence interval?
Okay, reject that hypothesis.
I will reject the null hypothesis. Why?
Significance.
Right, because it doesn't contain 0. 0 is not a plausible value for this confidence interval. So if I wanted to test the null hypothesis that the slope is equal to 0, I'll have to reject it at the 5% significance level. Okay.
Roger?
Yes.
Is there any case like the p-value and the p-value and the CI doesn't go together? Is there any can it happen?
Technically, no.
No.
On top of my head, no. I don't see a case where that would happen. Because we go so hand to hand, they are very, it turns out that, yeah, it can't really happen there.
Cannot, right?
Yeah, it cannot happen.
Because sometimes I observe maybe something is supposed to buy the number that.
Yeah. If you see that, then you're a little bit, you cringe a little bit there, but I don't think it can happen. Both need to go into it. And you can see here the p-value. Remember, so even when I asked for the p-value here, this is a p-value. What's the p-value here? What's testing is? Well, it's testing whether or not. There we go, right? It's much less than 5%. In that case, you will have to reject the null hypothesis. Or what null hypothesis is here? It's like, well, the slope here is, or at least the slope here is equal to 0. At least there's no relationship between, length and weight. That's really what this null hypothesis is saying. If you say the slope is equal to 0, it means that there's no relationship between the response and the covariate. Right? Okay.
And I saw some studies show the standard error. In this model, how we interpret the standard error.
So here is the standard error of the estimate, right? So this is still, I'm not sure what you mean by interpreting the standard error.
Yeah.
But I guess are you saying you can use the standard error to do something? I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by standard error. No, it's
like plus or minus change can happen, something like that. In one. Here the standard error is 0.002969.
yeah, this is the standard, but no, this is the standard error for the estimate of the slope. So that's how precise the slope is. Remember, you say the confidence interval was really tight, right? And that's because the standard error is so small. So, right, this model is certain about, the uncertainty around the estimate is very small, right? So that's the reason why. That's really what this does. Compared to here, for example, with it, of course, the scale is also higher, but the coefficient is also higher, and the standard error is slightly higher than what we have here.
So we don't need to show the standard error in our result, right? All we need.
Oh, you could show the standard error, right? You could show the point estimate and the standard error, or you could show the point estimate and confidence interval. Okay, all right, it's possible to do that. Okay, all right. Okay, so now what does this mean? Let's now interpret what it means here, right? Like what's the meaning of this? What we just estimating here? What we just estimated here? So remember that X or AN1, that is the height. And then that and the response AN8 is the weight, right? It's the weight. Remember, right? It's the weight. It's the weight. Right? And the weight here is in grams, right? And then no, kilograms, right? Kilograms. I need to check the unit there. And then the units, the length here is in centimeter, right? Centimeters. All right. So now how do we interpret these parameters here? So here I have the intercept, I have the slope here. Remember for our small problem here in linear regression, we say what is -2? How do we interpret -2? Let's come back over here. How do we interpret -2 in our regression model? We said that was a slope, but what's the slope? That is
The change
the change in y for what?
for 1 unit of X.
For 1 unit increase in x. That's the same thing here, but slightly, right? So for every 1 unit in height, right, we increase by 0.02 on average, right? The average change in weight, right, is right around 0.028 for 1 unit increase in height. Okay, all right. Okay. All right. So to do the least squares, or at least to do the regression, right? We have a few things we need to assume, right? We clearly need to assume that, or at least we are assuming that, there is linearity between the covariate x, which is continuous, and the response y. There is a linear relationship. So it means that, right, if you look at the scatter plot, or if you compute the correlation, it should be something, something hard. Okay, all right, something different from 0. Okay, all right. So linearity, and then we can look at that, looking at the scatter plot. Sometimes looking at the scatter plot, you can get the feel for whether or not there is a linear relationship between y and x. And then also what we're assuming is now for inference, that we're assuming that the residuals have a normal distribution. The residual are normally distributed. But then we're also assuming that variability, right? The variability, we are assuming constant variability, right? So that the variability in the response really doesn't increase with the values of our covariance, for example. Right? So constant variability. All right. Okay. All right. So these are the conditions. These are the conditions you need to keep in mind whenever you're using a linear regression, right? Do I have a linear relationship between y and x? Are the residuals? What's the distribution of the residuals? And that's the assumption of constant variance here, hold or almost elastic, often referred to, right? So now I'm going to talk about how you can verify those, how you can check those, right? So the first one is fairly simple. That's really what we've been doing, right? All you need to do is just really need to plot the data and see what happened, right? So you plot the data, or what you can do, you can plot the response on the y-axis. On the x-axis, you have covariate, and then look at what's happening. Do you have a linear trend? Do you have the indication of linear relationship between y and x? So linearity, that's fairly easy. Or you can compute the correlation. Okay, all right. Okay. Well, another way also is that after you fit the linear regression, you can also look at the residuals, right? Is there any other trend in the residuals? So you can plot the residuals against your covariate. And then if there is a linear relationship between y and x, then those residuals should not show any, should not show any pattern, right? It should be a sort of like a scatter plot, no special pattern in the residuals, right? Okay. So look, for example, here, there is a clear linear relationship between y and x. Let's look at the residual. There's no clear pattern here, but here a little bit. See the linear relationship here. In fact, this doesn't quite look like a linear relationship. It looks a little bit like a curvy linear relationship, and you can see here that you see I have a pattern here in the residuals.
Yeah, that's what is birthing.
Of this one right here, right?
No, the middle.
Yeah.
I think in some certain point of x value, the y goes up, and some certain point of x value, the y goes down.
That's it. Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah, and that's because the assumption of linearity here is not quite is not verified. It's not true. Right? So that it's sort of like the curvilinear relationship between Y and X. And then you get to see that here in the residual study. And of course, here you had sort of a weak linear relationship between Y and X. You also have sort of, you can see here that there's not much, not much relationship between the residuals and X, but yet here this association is weak. All right. So now, so you can use a residual plot to do a bunch of things to sort of verify some of the assumptions we just talked about, right? And so you can look at the plot of the residuals, right? You can look at the plot of a fitted value against the residuals. And again, when you look at this plot, if your model is appropriate or reasonable, you expect to see no pattern in this data, right? You expect to see no pattern in this data. All right. And so you can use this following function, in Stata to do that. Right. And the red line here is, plotted at 0. And again, you really want to see if there's any pattern within those residuals there. But you can also plot the residuals against the predictors, right? Instead of fitted values. But again, you hope to see no pattern here in this plot there. You can also look at what we call influential or leverage points, right? So that really helps you to see unusual points, right? One of the assumptions with least squares is that that you don't have any observations that has a huge effect on the fit of the line, right? And so usually, unusual observations that's extremely large and different from the average, might tend to have an effect, a strong effect on the estimate. And so really, if all things being equal, you hope that those plot was that will fall over here, right? Under this red line, right? Will fall over here. So of course you see some of that here that fall on the other side there, outside of this quadrant here. And so one observation of interest might be this one right here that seems to have sort of relatively low leverage, but high normalized residual squares. Okay. And then also we have the one right there with high leverage, but yet small residual squares. Okay. And so then the second assumption is really normality. And so what we can do that is we can get the histogram for the residuals. We can look at the residuals, and then you can overlay the normal distribution, or you can look at what we call the QQ plot. So Stata gives you all these things to look at them. And really we can use those to gauge, to see whether or not the assumption of normality is reasonable. And we see here, for example, the QQ plot, if the assumption of normality was reasonable, we see that all of that fall on this line over here, right? Because we fall a little bit far apart, right? That suggests that, our data here have longer tails than expected, than a normal distribution. And then the assumption of constant variance. The assumption of constant variance says that if I look at the residuals, I also don't want to see any plot like more variability, or I don't want to see a sort of a shape where, I don't want to see a pattern where the dots are more clustered closer for some values of X, but then you tend to have more variability and tend to be far apart as you're looking at other values of X, right? And so if you look at this value here, when you look at this plot here, maybe there's a little bit of suggestions that, you see that a little bit of variability here for lower values of X, but as we look at, as the value of X increases, we get a little more, we also have kind of high variability here for high values of X there, right? So although here, I don't think we have strong evidence of heteroscedasticity, right? So that might not be much of a worry here. And then we can also look at, data points that will take to that potential taking have huge effect on our estimate there, right? And so this is really what I have there, right? Remember, I was showing you this data here. One of the reasons why, when I did the analysis, I only decided to look at BMI less than 40, right? So if I look at BMI less than 40, right? Then I have this here, I have the single value here. But if I look at BMI, if I don't restrict BMI, this is the data that I have here, right? And so this is the point here. So I have these points over here that are very far apart from the rest of the data. Okay, right? So once you see something like that, then you can go back and really try to understand what's going on here. Is of these data values, data entry issues, or are is it something else that you need to probably investigate a little more? All right. All right. And so now a quick note again about related to the interpretation of the an estimate in a regression, right? So here the intercept is negative, here the slope is positive, right? And so looking at here, right, since the slope is positive, weight increases with height, right? That's really what we expect to see. That's really what the scatter plot tells us. And again, 1 centimeter, well, that suggests that 1 centimeter increase in height is associated with right around 0.0284 kilogram, increase in weight, right? And so if the height increases by 1 centimeter, we expect to see, we expect an average change of 0.0284 kilograms in weight. And so since there's no data values, right? So there's no data values for which the weight is equal to 0, then the intercept is slightly difficult to interpret here. All right. I think that's what I have. I know I'm standing between you and lunch right now. Okay. Any questions?
No, not a question.
It's not a question. Okay.
Just wondering how the intercept can be minus from like that.
How the intercept can be?
Can be minus.
How?
Okay, I was just thinking about it, a variable or what the outcome that that intercept can be minus like that, and I kind of imagine the way of the data will look.
Right. I mean, I think that's
Because even x is 0, the y equal the intercept, and how can stay minus like that?
right. I think you hit into a very important point there, which is extrapolation, right? So, because assuming that x is equal to 0 is really, akin to extrapolation, right? But we don't really know what will happen to this model outside of the range of the data, right? So, and I think that's what makes the interpretation of the intercept difficult, right? Because usually you think about the intercept like, oh, well, the intercept would be the value of y, x is equal to 0, right? But here you can't really say that, right? Because the range of your data, we don't know if the linear trend will hold outside of the range of the data, right? So that's the reason why it's difficult to interpret. And at the same time, it just quite doesn't make sense here. You can't talk about negative weight when x, or negative weight when x doesn't make. But yeah, here it's hard to interpret it.
So it is already calculated from the overall
right.
data.
So I think that's one thing, right? Like, so because the least square stuff is just pure mathematics, right? Doesn't take into account the problem, right? It doesn't understand the problem, right? It doesn't take into account, oh, what do we be dealing with weight here? No, it doesn't do that. It's a pure mathematical procedure, right? So that's the best line he can come up with, because we told him just use mathematics to come up with this best line. Maybe if we have another criterion, then we will get maybe another different line that will be maybe a little more intuitive to us, where the intercept will be a little more easy to interpret. All right?
Thank you.
Why?
Anything else?
Before.
That's all right. I think we're ready for lunch. Oh, not yet. Oh, 11. Okay. Yeah. Let's definitely do. I don't know. I was ahead there a little bit.
Then you please know that.
Why people medicine is the expert.
Is what?
Yeah.
Say that again.
What is it? -6.
That's the intercept. Remember? That's the intercept. And then we were saying that it's a little bit difficult to interpret the intercept here. See, it doesn't really have a clear meaning here. This is negative, right? But it's hard to interpret it, the intercept. Okay?